asking if Channel 3 is working.
I'd like to call to order the October 7th meeting of the Avalon City Council. Roll call, please, Denise.
Councilmember Cassidy? Here. Councilmember Hernandez?
Here.
Councilmember Sampson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Olson?
Here.
And Mayor Marshall.
Here. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? It will be led by Councilwoman Cindy Magoogan Cassidy.
Place your right hand over your heart, and with me, I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you wouldn't mind to remain standing, there's a little something I'd like to read. On September 25th, 2014, the community of Avalon lost a phenomenal philanthropist and great friend. Bob Buddy passed away in the harbor that he loved. Bob and his wife Carol demonstrate the magnitude of caring and giving we should all strive to accomplish in our lives. Their compassion for loving a small coastal community and its residents is to be applauded. Beyond their exceptional fundraising efforts for the youth of Avalon, they are to be commended for bolstering our local economy on land and at sea. Bob and Carol's beautiful daughters, Maggie and Kimmy, are so very much a part of this community, and we share in their grief. We embrace them and Carol in this time of sorrow. Bob's passing brings to mind the uncertainty of our own existence. We should take this time to reflect on how our contributions and lifestyle enhance those around us. Godspeed on your journey to the next oasis, Bob. Thank you. We'd also like to mention that Hal Franks passed away recently as well, and a moment of silence for Mr. Franks. Thank you. And now we'll go to announcements.
Yes, Mayor. Only announcement I have is that item number 10 on the posted agenda has been removed. The applicant requested to not have this be heard.
Thank you. Written communications?
Yes, I have 4 that I'm aware of. I'm aware of a letter dated coalition, a letter entitled Coalition to Save the Catalina Island Aquifer, press release number 1 dated 9/29/14. A letter from Jordal Construction to me dated October 1. A letter from R.D. Olson to the mayor and council dated October 6. And an email from Mark Milan to the city council dated October 7th. Those are the 4 items I'm aware of.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could I just ask, I was aware of the letter from Jordal Construction, and rather than reading that into the record, could I request that you please make copy for all the council members to read that letter?
Sure, and I would probably like to add that it's probably prudent to share the response to the letter as well, and I'd be happy to furnish both of those.
Thank you.
And all these letters are public records available at the city.
Okay.
Ben, didn't you get a letter from Greg Freeman about the SROs?
Oh, I apologize. That's correct. The planning department did receive a letter from Mr. Freeman. I apologize. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we go
I have
on
a question.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't that be a conflict of interest that Councilman Cassidy would even mention that letter, considering she works for Jordal Construction?
They're no
During the
longer my
meeting?
client.
Excuse me?
They are no longer my client.
Okay, thank you.
If I can back up, Will Richards just walked in. Will Richards? Annie Marshall here? Are you ready to? Yeah. If we may take a few minutes on some really great news? And if you would please state your name, sir.
I'm Kevin. Excuse me. I'm Kevin Tager. I am Sally, Tommy, Clemens' grandson. Old grandson. Been here for a long time. And I was some weird circumstances to come back and return something to the island that's been missing for a long time. And I'm about to unveil that right now.
Okay.
And I'd like the artist who made it to do that. Yes. And this is Leroy. And we have the plaque to go with it. This is still the plaque.
12 years ago, 11.
Yep.
And it's about Leroy was someone Steve snatched kitty, you know, it was down on Front Street.
Welcome home, Leroy.
Yeah.
A lot of people have stories about him, so.
And the only thing I ask is that the city does the right thing with him. Okay? Because I paid money for it.
Where did you find him?
But that's a story that we'll talk about.
Under the pier, right?
Well, that'll be a story we'll talk
All
about
right.
in years. But the
Excellent.
thing is, I ask that the city does the right thing and put him back in his rightful place.
Mr. Trigger, thank you very much.
And
You brought smiles to all of our faces.
you know what? We need that once in a while.
Yes, we do. Thank you so very much, and Will, thank you.
folks.
Thank you, guys.
It was a cool cat.
Cool cat.
Okay, now to the regular business of the evening, which I thought that was just wonderful. We have a presentation by City Attorney Scott Campbell.
Scott H. Campbell.
Welcome to Avalon, Ben. Are you always amazed?
Well, can I just ask where it belongs on Front Street?
Wrigley Plaza,
Used
to the right of the stage, the left of the stage.
to be the left by the water fountain.
And what is, just forgive the ignorance, I don't know the significance.
Cat used to live on the pier.
Used to own the town.
Okay.
And Elizabeth Grisham Grisham wrote a book about Leroy the cat, a very
Okay.
popular selling book
Okay,
as well.
okay, got it.
Yes.
Dennis, you know what you have to do.
Can I just add,
Absolutely.
Please.
and Denise, I'm to tell you that Marty is going to stop calling you and hounding you to go through the warehouse to find Leroy.
I told her it wasn't up there.
Leroy was on Front Street and then at some point was moved, the city took him up to Falls Canyon and they were going to place him in front of the shelter that was there. They were going to they were going to put him in front of the shelter in Falls Canyon. That didn't seem like an appropriate place for him, completely in a place where no one would ever see or enjoy the statue. I believe when we then had the trailer placed in the alleyway there, the statue was brought to the trailer and he was affixed, we thought, very firmly to a base there at the Humane Society. But someone stole him.
Okay.
And he disappeared, but then I believe the city found him, or the sheriff's department. He was found, but then he disappeared again, never to be seen again. We had just assumed that the city had him in mothballs someplace. But anyway, it's wonderful that he's back.
So Leroy has 3 lives gone already,
Quite
right?
a few.
Okay, he's got 6
Quite
more.
a few. But he has found his way, as all cats seem to do, back home again.
Sweet.
Very true.
Thank you.
The cat around.
Okay, can you beat that one, Scott?
No, I can't.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to have a brief presentation on conflicts of interest. We've actually had the 2-hour training for the City Council that covered conflicts of interest and many other ethical things. And we've been with this council for 6 months now, and now we've had experience with how with how conflicts work, and so we thought it'd be a good time to just recap what the general rules are with respect to conflicts of interest, because there's been a lot of talk in town. So basically, the basic rule is that a public official, and a public official is a city council member, a planning commissioner, or another person who sits on an appointed body, has a conflict of interest in a decision if that decision has a material effect on one or more of your economic interest. Economic interest are a business that you own, a source of income, we'll talk about that, or an interest in real property you own. And basically what we do is, if a decision involves one of your interests, sources of income, or property, you generally have to abstain from voting on anything affecting that unless it is indirectly involved. And we'll get into what that means. Let's talk first about what your sources of income are. Business entity. So you have a economic interest in a business entity if it's operated for profit, and you have invested $2,000 or more in it, or you're a position of management. So if you own or are in a position of management with a business entity, and that business entity comes before the city council, you cannot vote on that item. The second type is a source of income. So a public official, and a public official is you, your spouse, or your dependent children. It is not your adult children. It is not your parents. It is only you, your spouse, or your dependent children. So you have a economic interest if a source of income to you gives you more than $500 a year, and it's 12-month period. So it's not a fiscal year. It's you look at the date of the decision and you go back 12 months. And if you've gotten $500 from a source of income in the last 12 months, you can't vote on anything where that item is before the city. What is income? Income is basically pretty much any money you get: salary, commissions, dividends, if you sell, gifts or loans. So you have to watch out that you don't get $440 or more from an entity. If you do, then that's a source of income. You can't vote on that. If someone forgives a debt, or you own a 10% of interest in a business and you get money from that. So basically, if you get money from someone in town, that is a source of income, and it's not necessarily a customer of your business. There's totally separate rules for if they are a customer of your business. There you have to look at, are they a significant customer? And so there's been in the past, there are council people that own businesses that one of their major customers is the Island Company. They recuse themselves because they have to, because there's special rules for customers. Exceptions are money from governmental entities. That's not a conflict of interest. And campaign contributions. Campaign contributions, if someone donates to your campaign, you do not have a conflict of interest in that. There's a small exception for planning commissioners. If planning commissioners are running for office and a company donates to the planning commissioner and they're not yet on the city council, the planning commissioner will have a conflict of interest. So this rule only applies to city council people. Now, if you have a source of income and it is directly involved in the decision, in other words, they're the party asking for something, you have a conflict of interest and you cannot vote. So the example here is, let's say you work for a company and that company is coming and asking for something from the city, either from the planning commission when you're a planning commissioner, or they appeal something and it comes to you as the appellate body. If that's the party before you, they are directly involved, meaning they're the party that is asking for something from the city. You have a conflict of interest. You cannot vote on that. Again, it's directly involved. So some of the confusion lately has been on the indirect involvement. And if a business entity is not the one standing before the city asking for something, but they're affected by it, that's called an indirect conflict. And the rules for indirect are vastly different. And it takes thousands and thousands of dollars of an impact on a company that has an indirect conflict of interest to disqualify someone from that. An example, and this is from the Fair Political Practices Commission materials, if you're getting salary from a company and that company owns property and a tenant of that company is coming and asking for a land use entitlement or perhaps a letter of approval, and it's not the company that you are the employee of, that's an indirect involvement, and therefore it's not the penny rule. It's much different. And what we have to do is you have to look at, there's a whole, the regulations are this thick on just this one rule itself. And what you have to do is you have to look at how much money is involved in the decision, how much money the source of income earns a year, and whether its expenses go up. It's a very complex process. So again, whether you can vote on it, if it's not in front of us, that's a complex thing. What we'd ask that is that when you get your agenda package, you look at it beforehand to see what's on the agenda. And if, gosh, this is a business that I get money from, call our office and we can help you go through the regs to see if you have a conflict of interest or not. The other type of interest is an interest in real property. Basically, if you own property and it's $2,000 or more, and you either own it, you lease it, we'll get into that, you have an option to purchase, or you own it as part of a trust. If that piece of property comes before the city for a vote, you can't vote on that piece of property. You can't give yourself an entitlement, or you can't rule on something that affects your property directly. Now, your property is directly involved if it's the subject of the decision. So you own a house and you come to the city, I want to put a transient occupancy permit. Okay, it's directly involved, you can't vote. It's also directly involved if it's 500 feet of the property that is subject to the jurisdiction. So what we do is we have software in the city, and we plug in the address of the property, it goes to the boundaries of that, and then it draws a line 500 feet around that. And if you own property in that 500 feet, you can't vote on that decision. Your property is also involved if there's a specific improvement that is going to be done with respect to your property. And an instance of this is, and we run this in Lake Arrowhead all the time, is if we're going to do a street project that's going to make, it's going to slurry seal or put in a new street right in front of your house, and we're coming and we're asking the city to spend money on it, you can't vote on that because it's going to improve the property. It's going to improve your street. So that's if you own property. If you lease property, month-to-month leases, you don't have a financial interest in that. If it's a month-to-month lease, you can go ahead and vote on it. If you have a lease that's longer than a month, then you have a material, a decision has a material financial impact on you, and it's, again, within 500 feet. If, well, it does unless the decision has no effect on the termination date of the lease, the amount of the rent, the value of any sublease. In other words, a decision is going to make your ability to lease it to someone else higher. Because this ice cream shop is going up near my house, I can sublet it to someone else for $20 more because they really like ice cream. The decision impacts how you can use that property, or this vague and ambiguous thing, which is the use and enjoyment of the property. That's not been defined yet. But basically, if you lease property and you're within 500 feet, you generally can't vote on it But you look at these factors, and if you can say, yeah, it's not going to have these effects, you can. Most leases that we deal with in the city of Avalon, when it's within 500 feet, people vote because these factors aren't satisfied. Again, month to month, there's no interest. So all those conflicts of interest that we've talked about, those are statutory conflict of interest. Those are things that the state of California, not our office, not the city of Avalon, this is the people in Sacramento, they said these are what the rules are. And if you have one of those conflicts of interest, you can't vote on it. Now, what happens when we have 3 people with a conflict of interest? Okay, if you have a statutory conflict of interest, you need 3 people to vote on things. You need 3 people to have a quorum for the city council to conduct business. And so that's when we draw straws. And Avalon doesn't make a distinction between whether it's property you own or a company that you work for. And in fact, the FPPC, Fair Political Practice Commission, doesn't want, it looks bad, frowns upon saying there's a difference in the type of interest. In other words, a property interest is more important than a financial interest because you work for a company. They want you to treat all interests the same. Doesn't mean that we couldn't have a rule, but basically they want all interest to be, the statutory interest to be the same, and you draw straws. So several years ago, we had 3 council people that were in somewhat or another involved with the island company, and so every time an island company matter came up, we had to draw straws. And once you draw a straw, then you are that council person for that item for the duration of the item. So you do not draw straws for like let's say a lease affecting a property 10 different times because you'll have 10 different people. Once you draw the straw, that's it. You are going to be there for the rest of that item. So those are all statutory conflicts of interest created by the state of California. There's another type of conflict of interest created by judges, and this is the unbiased decision making. The basic rule is that you have to avoid placing yourselves in a position where your personal interest or your personal bias comes into effect when you've got something that you're going to be acting on. Even if there's a statute, even if you don't have a financial interest, you can still be judicially prohibited or constitutionally prohibited from voting on something because of bias that you have. So what's bias? A personal interest. In other words, the example here, it was a city of Hermosa Beach case. The person didn't have a financial interest in it, but they were going to build a second-story condominium that blocked that person's view of the ocean. And he was so upset about that he could not think straight when that application come before the city council, because it's like, gosh, it's not going to affect me with my money. It's 500 feet away, but darn it, it blocks my view of the ocean, and that really upsets me. And so the Supreme Court said, no, you can't vote on that because you're too personally upset about something. Personal animosity towards a party. If you're involved in litigation with someone, if you just hate them and they're coming before you, the law says that you have to recuse yourself because you are biased. Personal favoritism towards a party. Again, this is someone where someone's living with you. They're not related. Or they've got something. They're your best friend. You should vote on that. And so, what we should do is mere familiarity does not constitute bias. It's got to be something more. You can have an opinion on something, but you've got to be open. This is called, it's a basic tenets of due process. Everyone that comes before the city who's asking for something has the right to be treated fairly, to have their rights heard, to have their case heard fairly, and you make the determination. If you get information before a matter comes before you, it's always the best practice to when you begin your discussion saying, I visited the property, so that it's on the record as to what information you have gathered. I met with the developer for a half hour, and they gave me a presentation. It's always good to explain to the public what information you've received, because they're not there to see that information. Again, this is the due process rights. So citizens appearing before the council have a due process right to fair hearings and determination. These are due process rights which are constitutionally created, which means that if you have a bias that is constitutionally based in due process, you can't draw a straw. Okay? You cannot participate in it, period. Because it's not the government saying, or it's not a statute saying you have a conflict of interest, it's the Constitution of the United States. And so you can't draw a straw. You just cannot participate. So you have to sit out for that hearing. Now, a legislative proceeding is different. In other words, when you're making a law, we have several ordinances on the agenda tonight. Well, when you're making a law, you're not exercising your judgment in terms of deciding a dispute between two parties. You're making the law. And people vote for you to make laws. They contribute to your campaigns to make laws. And that's okay. You can be as biased as you want because you're making laws, because you're acting as a legislature. Difference is when someone's coming to you and they're asking for something or they're in a dispute and you're acting like a jury, that's when you have to be fair. That's when you have to consider the evidence. Examples of adjudicative proceedings for the Planning Commission and for appeals to the council is variances, use permits, subdivision map acts. We have one of those, and any appeals. Revocation of entitlements. Someone has something and you're taking it away. Any code enforcement actions if it ever makes its way up to the city council. Personnel actions. So in Avalon, the city manager makes a decision on employment matters, and if someone doesn't like that, you, as the city council, or the appellate body, you decide whether to uphold the discipline or not. So in those matters, the person has a fair right to be heard. You're acting as an adjudicative body. Some examples of it, or again, where you have actual bias, where there's a probability of actual bias. In other words, you've written editorials in the newspaper against a certain development. They can come up and say, I don't think we're going to be treated fairly. Or there's an appearance of bias. Again, a council member participates in a hearing. What I always tell everyone is take the evidence at the hearing. Don't commit to anything before you've heard all the evidence, because there may be new facts that come in at the hearing. It may make you may want to consider your opinion. Don't express things until it gets to the council, and that way you can fairly consider the evidence. Now, what do you do if you have a conflict? Okay, and you'll see this. Before the item is on the agenda, you disclose what the conflict is. I own property within 500 feet. I work for, the island company, whatever. You have to leave the council chambers. That's, again, these are the state rules, not my rules. You have to leave the council chambers because the state says we don't want you to make hand signals or making faces during a presentation. And you have to refrain from participating in making, or using or attempting to use your position as an officer to influence the decision. That means that if you have a disqualifying conflict of interest, you can't lobby your other council people. You can't lobby the staff. Okay? You have to stay out of it. It's not just what happens at a council meeting, it's what happens before, and forming the arguments, forming staff's opinion. That's participating. That is not allowed. You cannot influence Avalon officials. It doesn't mean that you can't, as a council member, meet with people and hear matters, because you are council people, you are planning commissioners, you can get information. So you can meet with applicants to understand what's going on with the city. You just can't use that information to influence other Avalon officials. Violation of the Political Reform Act. This is the statutory penalties. If you knowingly violate it, it's a misdemeanor. If you knowingly violate it and you're convicted of a misdemeanor, you lose your office for 4 years. There's administrative penalties. Usually they're $5,000. Civil action by injured parties. In other words, you shouldn't have voted on this. I'm going to sue you. And then if you're the deciding vote, the city action can be invalidated. But what the courts also look there is if there's a quote innocent party. In other words, let's say someone comes up and it's a 5-0 vote, and some council people shouldn't have participated in it. Well, it wasn't that applicant's fault that the council person participated or planning commissioner. So the courts will look at that. The decision as to whether you have a conflict of interest resides not with the city attorney, not with the city manager. It resides with each council member or each planning commissioner or commissioner. We can only give advice, and no one is infallible. There are 3 things you can do to guarantee that you're okay with conflict of interest. If it is a statutory issue, in other words, do I have a conflict of interest under this statute? You go to the FPPC. They take about 4 to 6 weeks to give an opinion. It's called the golden ticket. And so you ask them, you give them the facts, they issue an opinion, and you can go ahead and vote on that. Okay? Or they can say you can't, and you're done. The second thing you can do is for the judicial conflict or the constitutional conflict of interest, you go to the Attorney General. Again, you write a letter to the Attorney General. You explain all the facts, or someone that has an application can do that. You explain all the facts, and the Attorney General will give an opinion as to whether the official has a conflict of interest or not. And the last thing you can do to be bulletproof is if there's any question about it, if you can go either way, if it's a close call, I'd say don't participate, because you don't want to bring that upon yourself. You don't want to put the city's decision at risk. It's not worth it. There are ways. We always will be voting on matters, even if all of you have a conflict of interest. We'll be drawing straws. The law is very complex. We have 4 people in my office. All they do is conflict of interest stuff. That's all they do. 24 hours. I mean, this is it. Because the regs are thick. They're confusing. There's exceptions that we haven't gone into. Again, our office is here to help. You've had experience the last 6 months. You know it's not as easy as it first appeared to be. And so we're here to help. Any questions, I can answer them. And I give advice to individual council members directly. And many council members have come up to me before items for years, frankly, and I will give that advice to them directly. In fact, I think all of you I've talked to on various different matters about whether you have a conflict or not.
Any questions of the council? I just had one. So if I had to recuse myself, but there's something of interest, can I speak as a member of the public?
Only if. There's one exception to the rule. You have to leave, period. The only time you can speak as a member of the public is if it involves your property. So, if, for instance, you live 500 feet of a development, hypothetically a drugstore, you can come and speak as a member of the public during the public comment period because that impacts your property. It's only if it impacts your property can you vote. Otherwise, you are not allowed to come and make any comments during the public.
Okay.
It's a very, very narrow exception.
Okay. Great. I think we can move on.
Any questions from the public?
Oh, does the public have any questions or comments they'd like to make? Thank you. No? Okay, we all learned a little bit of something today. Thank you. Okay, let's have the city manager report.
Yes, Mayor, I think I only have one item. You may have seen on your seat here at the dais a little color picture that is of the sheriff vehicles that have been branded with the City of Avalon logo. I don't believe we're quite finished with the job. I think we had 5 vehicles. I think we may have taken care of 3 of them, but it's our intent to get them all branded so that people know that this is our police department, this is our contract law enforcement service, and I'm pleased that we were able to get these up and running, so to speak, in a short amount of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Doug, I think it adds a lot of color to it too. So thanks. Okay, we have city attorney report.
Just one thing, we're going through the hundreds of bills signed by the governor. The one that really does impact Avalon, everyone should know, is starting July 1st. No more paper bags at Vaughn's. Plastic bags, I'm sorry. And you're going to have to pay 10 cents a bag, wherever the Vaughn's is.
And that 10 cents is set by this new law?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All righty.
And there's already the plastic bag industry has already filed a referendum to overturn that law because they like their plastic bags.
But we just keep moving on.
That's the law until the voters consider it.
Where does that 10 cents go per bag?
The store.
The store.
The store just gets it for the cost of the bag.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting. Leslie Warner, if you're out there, I hope you're happy. That's good. Okay. Council member reports. Joe, would you like to start? Councilman Joe?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The first thing is we're going to have a bench put in down at Vaughn's. Actually, it's right outside the Bay of Seven Moons, and this is something that we've been working on for. Things take a long time on City Council. We've been working on this for 6 months. It's a bench that's for people who come out of the store that need a place to sit down until they're waiting for the taxi. So it's going to be a no smoking sign on the bench because we didn't want to mess around it. We didn't want the vendors that have businesses in that area to have to clean up the mess, the smoking, and so basically this was brought forth by some senior citizens and some handicapped people here in town that needed a place to sit down when they come out of the store with their food. So with the hard work of our city manager Ben Harvey and Jordan Monroe, and a little bit of diplomacy, we got this taken care of. And it may seem not much, but it's a big thing for people when they come out of the store and they need a place to sit down, waiting for the taxi. Okay, so that'll probably go in. The guys are working on it up at the city warehouse, and that will probably go in within the next couple weeks. Ben, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it'll be a nice bench. The second thing is I had some comments on the air show, which it was really nice. It was a successful air show. It was great. I enjoyed it, but we had some problems with some of the noise, and that would pertain to senior citizens, people with sensitive hearing, animals. Some veterans were kind of creeped out about it. But most of them said that they were acceptable to it. They just didn't, they wanted a heads up a little more in advance because we didn't realize that we were going to have an F-18 flying over the top of the city, and it was a heck of a show. So next year, what we're going to try to do is maybe we could speak to the promoters of the show and hand out earplugs throughout the town, and maybe even deliver them to some people if they we'll give people fair warning if it's going to be another jet performance like that, okay, and possibly even curve whatever their flight patterns are in order to suit the people that were offended by it. But we do appreciate the people who put the show on, and it was a great performance. And thank God nobody got hurt, and it went off pretty flawlessly as far as I know. The third thing I want to announce is we had a meeting. It's kind of like a public meeting that Captain Federal puts on like once a month, and it was down at Pete's Snack Bar. And what we talk about is basically crime within the city, how to prevent crime, how to report it, some things that we can curb as a city council that are going to be coming up, things that kind of concern us, like kids in the golf carts without restraints. There was about 20 people from the public there, and there was about 6 or 7 most of the deputies there. And it was really cool because they answered a lot of questions. You got to know them a little better. You got to understand how they operate and how they deal with situations within the community. It was actually really, really cool. And Captain Federal put this on, and we got to meet some of the deputies too, so we got to understand exactly what they go through. And Martin Lieva down there, he served us, he gave us coffee or sodas, whatever we wanted, drinks, and besides the flies, but they're everywhere right now. We talked about how to report a crime, things like that, crime statistics, how the sheriffs deal with, angry drunks and things. We were trying to understand, since we have like 35 bars in this town, we raised the question like, well, how can you go about managing when people are too intoxicated, and we don't want to be a community that promotes so much drinking, yet the crime list as far as arrests for drunks is really high. So the sheriff explained to us that there's a protocol that they go through, and they walk people through this that have had a little too much to drink, and basically, they are very caring about people, and they're very understanding about how they go about these sensitive situations in our town. I was very curious about that because the violence has been quelled here in Avalon. We don't have a lot of it now, and that has a lot to do with the way the sheriffs are able to negotiate with people that may or may not be out of line. So we wanted to let people know that the specifics about how to report a crime, and this is something that is very important because it's educational for the public. And the reason I'm saying something about this, and the city council has gotten involved in this, and we're proactive with the sheriffs, is that we have a podium to stand on, and we can announce this, and possibly in the future what we can do is give people fair warnings, such as in the future they're going to be giving out warnings for talking on cell phones, having babies in your golf cart without restraints. So you will see the sheriffs, pulling people over, and they'll give you a few warnings and let you know, especially if they see a kid that's probably in danger or something like that, or maybe the adult doesn't realize it. Maybe they should take an extra precaution. So we're going to be working with the sheriffs in order to educate people. So it just doesn't seem like they're just hurt. It's just, we want people to be safe is what we want. Child seats, let's see, community policing. We spoke about that because we do have it's a committee that we get together with Paul Perea from the pest control, and basically we talk about neighborhood watch every once in a while. And so basically we get together every couple months with Paul Perea, and all this stuff has really helped out a lot. It's educated the public. There's more ways for people to understand exactly how we just control crime within our community, because that's really important. We need people to feel safe over here, and I think that is seeing a whole new turn because of the great job that Captain Federal and his sheriffs are doing, and that's something that that's the last of my reports that I wanted to let you guys know. And he also let us know that if you ever have any situation with the deputy that is in question, you can go talk to him or report it to one of his sergeants, and they'd be glad to hear whatever concerns you have about the conduct and the way deputies manage their situations here in town. It was a very good meeting that we had. Anyway, that's all I have for tonight, Annie.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And Cindy, would you like to go next?
Oh, sure.
Three items. One, just a reminder that we are in stage 2 water rationing. For more information, you can go to www.saveourh2o.org. If you have a report of an offense on water use, you can call 1-800-367-8851 and let them know you're calling regarding Catalina, and they are trained to handle your call appropriately. But just a reminder that water is a very precious resource. I was also asked to repeat the information regarding the Blue Line in Long Beach, and that is that the Blue Line train depots between Anaheim First and Pacific are currently closed for a 30-day period starting last September 20th, will run through October 19th. However, there are buses that will be there to transport persons to the first available location that the train is running. So if you need to use the Blue Line, you can still go to the depot. There'll be buses running, and we'll get you to your next location. And all of that work should be completed by October 19th and resuming regular services. Last but certainly not least, courtesy of Audra McDonald in our grants department, to announce that the abandoned vehicle roundup will commence tomorrow. Over 50 non-operative golf carts, 2 full-size vehicles, 3 self-surrendered golf carts that did not pass the noise inspection, and about 16 motorcycles will be rounded up over the next few days and shipped off the island. So thank you for all your hard work on that, Audra, and this should be great for the city as well.
Yeah.
That's it.
Very nice.
Councilman Hernandez.
I'd just like to thank Dennis and his crew, the street department guys that are doing all the tree trimming and stuff. The things seem to be going well in that department. City's taking shape, looks pretty good right now. And just a little kudos to all the boys in the street department. Dennis, good job.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Annie. I only have really one thing. This Friday at either 5 or 5:30 is the Avalon High School's homecoming football game up at Joe Machado Field. Your Avalon High School team right now is 4-0. They'll do the first league game, so go out there and show your support for the kids. Thank you.
Okay, and just a couple other ones. We want to thank Ron Trupa and everybody for the wonderful film festival that went off the week before last. And if any of you got to go up there, Mr. Belland from Mr. 26 Miles Across the Sea was very excited with the hokey presentation we gave him and the knighting we did. It was very cute, and it was a lot of fun. And Blanny Hagen was up there with me, so that was very sweet. The other thing is Rudy Pilch, if you're out there listening, he sent the council and city manager Ben Harvey a wonderful book called The 10 Paradoxical Commandments. And I believe that Ben has also, to all of the stakeholders that get our Friday update, I think he made comment to this book that is incredible. And Rudy was so inspired by the way we behave up here sometimes, and realizing our need to work as a community with all the stakeholders. We need to be civil and good to each other. We're all in this boat together, especially in light of the water crisis and all future planning for the city. So I know I'm finding the book very fascinating, and it's a very quick read, so if any of you are interested, again, it's called The Paradoxical Commandments by Kent M. Keith. I think it's a must-read for anybody that deals with people, and I think that's pretty much all of us. So thank you, Rudy, very much. And the last announcement, this Saturday, October 11th at noon, we will be celebrating the life of Bob Buddy at the M Restaurant. So the community is welcome to come out and share a wonderful afternoon with Bob's family and all of his friends. So thank you.
Annie?
Yes.
I just got a message from Public Works that our bench that we've been working on so hard will be installed tomorrow. So thank you, Public Works, for that. Appreciate it. And Jordan Monroe, working so hard.
All right, oral communications. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the council at this time? No action will be taken on non-agenda items, and we will limit your comments to approximately 3 minutes. And then there's Jen.
2 minutes for her.
Yeah, 90 seconds.
Hang on.
Oh, isn't that cute?
Oh, I just got it. Duh.
Well, we have our Oktoberfest coming up, October 25th. That's the last Saturday of October. It's going to be on South Beach, and it is a fundraiser for local nonprofits and youth groups here in town, school classes, arts clubs, all kinds of important groups in town that used to receive church mouse funding, and so we're hoping to ease their burden that they're feeling by having a good time and raising our glass. And so we're having an Oktoberfest. We're going to have an oompa band. We're having a silent auction. It's going to be great. It's going to be a large amount of breweries joining us for the beer tasting, and you can get tickets at the Chamber of Commerce. That is catalinachamber.com. You can buy your tickets right online. It's really easy, or go down to the Green Pier. You can also buy your tickets here at City Hall. So again, October 25th, Saturday, and catalinachamber.com.
1 to 4?
1 to 4.
Okay.
Yeah. And then additionally, we are celebrating Fall Fest next Thursday evening, the 16th. That is on Front Street from 5 to 9. And local groups again down there having game booths and food, hayride, our pumpkin patch on the beach, and a lot more. So that's a really good time. If you haven't reserved your booth yet and you're just thinking right now, oh shoot, I need to get my booth for my group, it's not too late. You can still do that here at the rec department at City Hall. The number is 0220, and we'd love to sign you up. See you then.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. People just popping up.
Michael Ponce. Joe had mentioned the flies. The last time we had an issue with the flies, it was that they were not covering things properly at the landfill. So it may be something that we look into, because a few years ago we had a major problem with the flies, and it seems like it's back again. So, and then I don't know if anybody's going to say anything about this issue, but it would be about the Groove Cruise. You know, I love the fact that people love to come to our island and have a good time, but I felt that that clientele was totally inappropriate to be ushered down Front Street. There should have been another way of getting them to Descanso and not straight through town. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Good evening, honorable members of the City Council and our neighbors, our residents. My name is Ronald Garcia. I'm Region Manager Public Affairs for Southern California Edison Company. I started with the Edison Company almost 47 years ago, and I welcome the opportunity to work on the island. You'll be seeing me regularly and get to know you well. I've already attended a couple of your nonprofit organizations and Rotary meetings and enjoyed meeting the people here. Have 4 items I'd like to report out on, and they deal with on October 21st at your 2014 City Council meeting. Jeff Lawrence will be here with me, and we'll be presenting an update on Stage 2 water rationing and other water issues. And at this time, all I'd like to say about water is to commend the community, the residents, and the businesses, because their conservation efforts are paying off. Thank you very much. Secondly, not too long ago, end of September, the Catalina residents received a letter from Edison Company. It was in error, and it was talking about us being unable to access your electric service to upgrade the meter to a smart meter. The letter was intended for the people over town, and that batch for this side of the Catalina Avalon should have been pulled. So my apologies. Shouldn't have received that letter, and the confusion it caused was embarrassing, and for that I apologize. If and when we do, and it shouldn't be too long down the road, perhaps before the end of the year, early next year, we will be coming to the island. We will be installing smart meters, but we'll ask for agenda time to talk about the program, and any nonprofit or service organization that would have me speak to them about what we're going to do, I welcome the opportunity. So, and then on a happy note, Edison Company has a women's roundtable and regularly participate during the upcoming season of service. And this year, we're partnering with the City of Avalon and the Catalina Island Women's Forum. We have an event planned for November 8th, and we will be providing some tender, loving care to Tremont Hall. We visited, we saw a number of your residents working out there, and we realized that it could use some paint inside, outside, and some cleaning around the building. And we said, let's do that as one of our projects. And so we thank you, the city, for partnering with us and for helping us to get the word out. We look forward to members of the community working with us that day, November 8th. And you can imagine the response from our employees recognizing an opportunity to come to the island and then be able to work on a facility and then be able to enjoy the amenities of the island. Boy, it's going to be a great turnout. And so lastly, this is also great news, and I'm really pretty excited about this. As part of Southern California Edison's public safety outreach efforts, a live interactive learning production will make stops in 41 schools across our 50,000 square mile service territory. So here in Avalon, along with 23,000 other students that are across our service territory, they'll have an opportunity to meet Sparky, the wonder bug. It's not one of those flies that our resident back here spoke about, but Sparky the wonder bug. And he'll be welcomed because he will be costumed in antennas and wings. So let me tell you a little bit about a bug's life. It features actors from the National Theater for Children playing an assortment of characters. They make learning fun and entertaining children. Children are taught how electricity is made, used, and how to identify dangerous situations both outside and inside the home, and how to stay away from dangerous situations. And so one of our number one priority in Edison Company is that our residents, our customers, our employees should go home safe at the end of the day. So if you see hanging or dangling wires, please call 911 first and then the Edison Company. If you should see someone involved in those wires, please do not try to rescue it. It is just a very, very bad idea. And then also, we don't care if those wires are telephone or tennis shoelaces hanging from wires. Let us be the judge and identify what is a safe wire hanging from the poles. So anyway, the children who come to this event or have an opportunity to see this event will learn about safety, how to protect themselves. There'll be a message that they can take home to their families. We'll provide teaching tools, classroom curriculum, homework assignments, and active books in English and Spanish. And the children, of course, have an opportunity to share that with their siblings and their families. So thank you for the opportunity to share time with you and look forward to seeing you regularly.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Good luck.
Okay. Yes.
Lisa Lavelle, 239 Descanso. I was just curious, and maybe Mr. Garcia can help answer this question as well. Lower Descanso is very dark. There used to be a hanging streetlight, both over Lower and Upper Descanso. Several years ago, those were taken out, but there was never a pole placed on Lower Descanso to light it. It's gotten to the point where there have been some fights and brawls that have or have not been responded to. There have been incidences of egg throwing and all sorts of other things after dark. And so I'm wondering if, I know one of the residents actually asked the vacation rentals to turn on some of the porch lights even if the houses are not occupied so that there's at least some light in the street. But I'm wondering if we can speak to the city or the Edison to have a study done or to have a pole put in.
Sure. So the way that works, the city can certainly request a light to be installed, and I'd be happy to take that effort on. A couple things to be mindful of. We obviously want to talk to all the residents that could potentially be impacted.
Right.
Sometimes some folks want to light, some folks do not want to light. So you may have to consider things like glare shields and so forth so that it doesn't go in someone's bedroom window. Yeah. The other thing, of course, it's not a large cost, but the city would then be on the hook for the electricity resulting from that light going forward. There could potentially be some cost to the city, but it would depend on a couple factors. It could be partially on Edison's dime to help us install that. So we could look into that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I ask just a follow-up question on that? Has Edison done a survey of the streetlights in Avalon to find out how efficient they are? Because I know the technology's changed a whole bunch.
Has there been a survey completed? No. Not that I'm aware of. We could certainly request one to be done. The city could drive the effort to change out bulbs, and there's a number of options that you could go to. Bulbs that are more efficient, bulbs that are brighter, bulbs that are less light. So we could certainly work with the company on that if that's the pleasure of the council.
Is that kind of a yes? That would be a nice thing.
That's a nice thing.
Yeah. At the league, there were a lot of those people that
Yeah,
had all
a lot
those
of trick lights,
efficiency.
LED
Yeah.
lights and stuff like
Yes.
that.
Okay, bill
Okay.
direction. Good. Okay, consent calendar.
Yes, Mayor, we have 9 items on the consent calendar this evening. We have actions from the September 16th council meeting. We have 3 sets of expenditures totaling a bit under $2 million. We have an ordinance regarding reasonable accommodations, a final track map for Hamilton Cove, the recommended selection of a collection agency, the implementation of time and labor management software, and a resolution supporting Proposition P for park and recreation funding in LA County. I should mention that on that item, number 9, that we did receive a letter of support from the Catalina Island Conservancy, which I failed to mention during written and oral communication, which I'm remembering right now.
Public comment? Or did I do that in wrong order?
First you ask if any councilman wants to remove an item, then you ask if the councilman wants to do it.
Thank you. Council members, anything you want to remove?
No.
I have just a question on number 5. If I can just ask that quickly and then
Sure, if I
keep
could
it
ask
there.
Amanda to please come to the podium, in case this is an Amanda question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda.
We were talking about the senior housing on Beacon before, and that you came back to me and said that there is no elevator at that site.
That's correct.
So I guess I'm just wondering if we as a council should look into that, if there's an interest in looking into that, to see if there's something we could do to make that second story accessible. I guess it has nothing to do with this actual, well, if we're talking about accessibility, I think it's important.
We could bring that back, if that's the pleasure of the council, bring back a consideration of addressing that issue using appropriate funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Good job, Amanda.
She's going to be getting
Good
up a
job,
bunch of times
Amanda.
more tonight, so.
And what's the pleasure of the council?
I'd like to pull number 8, just so we can explain to the public that we have some, we're going to be spending their money in a real good way to make our system more efficient. And if Ben, if you could help me to explain to people exactly what this is going to be doing, and because
Sure.
I like this, I'd like to adopt this. I like it very much, and I just think people should know about this.
Do you want to talk about it, or should we just pull it?
Why don't you pull it and then we can.
Okay, and then talk about it.
You bet.
Okay. All right, so what's the pleasure, council?
Public.
The public like to comment on any of these items on the consent calendar? Okay.
Move staff on 1 to 7 and 9.
1 to 7 is there?
Second.
A second.
All right.
No worries.
Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Okay, item number 8.
Yes, and for this one, I'd like to ask Chris Wojcik to come forward. Chris Wojcik wrote the staff report for this. I'm just going to tee this up and then kick it to Chris. Basically, one of our charges that council has directed us to is to professionalize the organization. And no fault of prior administrations, but we are using paper timesheets currently. Okay, it gets the job done. It's a record. You know somebody's hours, but it's not the best way to do things, especially in 2014. So we are proposing to move to an electronic system where you are able to not only use it as a clock, if you will, for our hourly employees, but you're also able to draw from the leave banks that you have for accrued time. It will allow for us to do some reporting that we're just not able to do outside of collating things manually. It's through the company that currently provides our payroll processing, so they already have our employee data, which makes it nice. You'll note, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that this was the low bid that we received for this, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So we feel it's a fairly low investment. I believe it's around $5,000, including the startup. It is an annual fee that the city will incur of $3,000?
$3,000, yes.
Okay. But this is going to be the first step in a lot of additional modules that we'd like to bring to you to consider in the time tracking, performance evaluation, general HR realm. We really feel strongly that this is going to get us in the direction that we should have probably gotten some time ago.
Good evening, Chris Wojcik, Finance Department. I can say that we're very excited to for you to approve this and then to start implementing this, which we're teeing up for the beginning part of November. As Ben alluded to, we are still using paper timesheets, and we're trying to modernize and make ourselves more efficient by getting away from paper and having things more computerized and more accessible. We have, by the use of timesheets, it slows us down, it makes us more inefficient, and by making this change to an automated system, we're going to be operating better. As Ben did say, we did look at different options. We looked at a couple of vendors, ADP, Beyond Software Solutions, and Centrix. Centrix came in the lowest in terms of pricing, but we already have an existing contract with them for a number of years. They know the city, they have all of our data. For them to come in and add this module to us, it will be rather seamless. So we're very happy that there wouldn't be very much work on our part to implement this. But it modernizes us, and I'll just read from the agenda item itself the things that it's going to help us out with. In particular, eliminate, again, the completing and processing and storing of paper timesheets. Eliminate the need to track down supervisors for approving of those timesheets. Currently, and I'm sure everyone can attest to this at some point, if you're an approver of someone's timesheets, where are they when you need them to be? So by allowing us to have this, essentially every employee will have an account with Centrix Online. We will have computers available to them at their workstations where they can sign in at the beginning of the day and then clock out at the end of the day. And they can log their time and hours right there on the spot. When they submit their time entry, it goes right to their supervisor. The supervisor gets an email and they can approve their time right there on the spot. So it's rather quick. You will also have, or the employees will also have their accrued leave balances and other leave balances maintained online. So it will be current information, and they'll know what balances they have at any given time, be able to request time off. They'll be able to do that to know what their balances are. Let's see here. I'm going out of order here. Timesheets. Project codes. Right now, we really don't have much in terms of project codes to track employee, what the work they're going on. A few weeks ago, we had a hurricane that affected us. We had no codes with which to track the labor that was involved with that. So what we had the employees doing was writing on the back of their timesheets the amount of time they spent and where they spent that time. Right now, with the implementation of this, we can actually assign codes, and when they log into their computer, each day, they can actually say where they spent their time, what type of work they did. So it'll make us more efficient and be able to track that information much more easier. As I said, each employee will have their own account. They'll be able to view their payroll stubs. They'll be able to view their W-2 at the end of the year. So they can actually print their information right there on the spot, which would be good, another benefit. And they can make changes to their particular W-4 withholdings, anything affecting their benefits. They can actually make those changes themselves. We will still review them before they get implemented, but it avoids the employees from coming here to City Hall. They can actually do that out in the field where they're at. And then I guess lastly, it saves the accounting department. It's going to save us several hours each week, or every 2 weeks, processing and handling all of this paper. So we're looking forward to using those hours for other services. But it is a nominal cost. It's about $2,000 to set this up with training costs included, and then about $3,000 a year afterward. Essentially, it comes to about $2.50 per employee per month, which is a relatively nominal dollar amount, but that would be an ongoing charge each year thereafter. And that kind of summarizes it. If I can answer any questions that you may have.
I'm curious, on behalf of the employees, will you be providing a training program so they can understand exactly how this is done and exactly how simplify the thing on the computer? So, and then also in the same light, a lot of the guys do some pretty gnarly work. A lot of it's dirty, epoxy, paints, resins. How are the computers? Are they going to be like some of the warehouse and things, and some of the guys, are the computers good computers? Are they going to be able to handle that task?
To the first question you had, we will be doing 2 training sessions, probably a morning and an afternoon, to accommodate, to make sure we can get all staff in here, because we're only going to be judged by the success of this as how the employees adapt to it and how they use it and use it well. So we know that there's a lot of front-end work that will go in on our part to make sure that they understand it and they can use it easily.
Excellent.
And again, there will be computer terminals for all the employees where they primarily go to clock in each day, if you will, be it the harbor department, the fire department, or public works department, or here at the city. They will have computer access. In the outlying facilities, we can look towards making sure those, keyboards or monitors are a bit more stronger or capable to handle any type of issues with any type of chemicals or whatnot.
Yeah.
We'll take that into consideration.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Excellent. It sounds like it's going to be a good program, and it's going to make things a little bit quicker and easier, and actually less expensive in the long run. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much, Chris. It's really nice work.
Sure,
Mayor
thank you.
Chris, I know that a company I've worked for in the past had an issue with meal period penalties because people wouldn't clock out at 4 hours. Is this part of this program too?
We have talked with Centrix about that, the clocking in and clocking out. There are numerous considerations that we have to take into effect, and when we have our training sessions, we will speak to those, but there are a lot of nuances with the recording and time keeping of people's hours. So we haven't made a lot of decisions in terms of how best to do that. We're going to be, once you award this, we're going to be talking more with Centrix to make sure that we can implement that. Yes.
Sometimes it's difficult to clock in and out for lunch.
Other questions? Okay. Public, would you like to comment?
Sure.
Good job. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Chris. All righty. Council? Much pleasure.
Move staff on 8.
A second.
Moved and seconded.
All ayes.
Okay. Item number 11.
Yes, Mayor, there are 6 items under general business this evening. Again, we are removing item number 10, which makes item number 11 the first one. This is a consideration of a proposed extension of a transportation permit for Mr. Steve Wooley, doing business as Avalon Tours by Steve, and whether to allow for additional guided golf car tour transportation permits. So back in March, the council at that time approved a temporary transportation permit. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Councilmember Hernandez, I believe that you
I
already
have to
mentioned
go.
that you apologize.
Thank you, Ben.
You only told me twice, and I've already forgotten.
I was trying to figure out why, but I got it. I'm good.
Okay.
Reason why is he works for.
The nature of the conflict, yes.
The nature of the conflict is he gets, one of his jobs is working for a competitor.
I thought you had a conflict as well.
No.
Okay, all right. We're hyper conflict sensitive over here now, I think.
I'm not. I'm clear.
Okay, anyway, back in March, the council approved a 6-month temporary permit for Mr. Wooley to provide guided golf cart tours in Avalon. That time period has now come to a close, so it's appropriate for the council to consider what to do at this junction. Just for background, Mr. Wooley did provide adequate insurance, indemnified the city. We're not aware of any issues as a result of his golf cart tour business. At least none have been reported to us. A lot of things to discuss as you consider this, obviously. As you know, that there have been others in town that have expressed an interest in operating tours in a similar manner. So you need to consider that. You need to consider if there's a market for this type of service, whether it enhances the visitor experience. Potentially this could alleviate some traffic congestion, as these are people familiar with Avalon that are driving as opposed to our visitors who may not be. If you are going to be considering additional transportation permits, you may want to consider duration, number, locations for operation, and then finally, whether or not these may interfere with the existing taxi service. That could be something that you want to discuss as well. And lastly, if it should be subject to the city's admission taxes. So all these probably should be considered and discussed this evening. I know that Mr. Wooley is in the audience. With that, I would turn it over to you.
Should we have Mr. Wooley, if you'd like to speak, come up first, or after we've discussed it? What would be your pleasure?
I think either way is appropriate. It would certainly be probably a good idea to have Mr. Wooley speak on this item since he is here.
Well, thank you very much for giving me a couple minutes, and I really do thank you for the last 6 months. It's almost 7 now. By my calculation, there have been about 500 people that I've shown different parts of Avalon and talked about different things that they wouldn't normally know. And one of the things that has stood out is that they get to ask questions. And I cannot answer all of them. I've learned a lot. But I have really enjoyed the fact that it's an interactive experience. And they've been extremely complimentary. And I've met people from everywhere, including as far away as Dubai, Russia, the Asia countries. And so it's been fun for me, and I really believe that it has been an asset to the community. I also wear a hat of, you're not supposed to go backwards around Hogsback. So I've had that opportunity to stop people from doing that on more than one occasion. So I feel like I've benefited in a lot of ways. But any questions?
I think we're good right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Doesn't Mr. Wooley, he already pays admission tax, right? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Did we? Right.
Yes.
Sorry, the consideration was future if you're going to be granting additional.
Yeah.
So I apologize for any confusion on that.
Okay, my personal say so. May I speak, Mayor?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. I like it. I like the tour. I think it's a great tour. It's good for the town. I think Steve does a good job at it. But what we need to do as a city is we need to get on board with our transportation and our traffic studies. Or just make some decisions about where we want to go with our transportation and traffic studies, and figure out exactly how many vehicles that we can possibly have on the streets of Avalon like this. I think it does enhance the visitors' experience of Avalon. And I don't see anything that I really dislike about it. I think it was actually a great idea. I thought about it quite a few years ago, and Steve did well. Although what we need to do is definitely figure out exactly what we would require from the other services that would if we open the door to several services, it would be how many would we open the door to? This is just my train of thought right now. How many would we open the door to? How many could we handle? And how would we go about making that selection? If we did make that selection, would it be a draw of straws, a drop of the hat? Either way, I think what Steve's doing is great. And honestly, I would like to, until we figure out what we're doing, I don't think he's doing the community any harm being out there right now. So I think we need to get on board with and Councilman Cassidy has some great ideas going on as far as and Olson as far as the vehicle where we want to go with our vehicle study and our traffic study so that we can better understand here as a city council, as a cohesive team, what we can handle here on the city and what's enough, what's not too much. And it's actually going to be something that I think would be good for the town. And, you know, a couple of the rental car places have already put their proposals or their names out there for this. And we've already understood that we're not going to have any more vehicles on the street because of this. That's one thing that's kind of neat about it is you're going to have your own vehicle to do this. So, that's my initial thoughts about this.
Cindy or Ole, you have a thought?
I'll defer to Ms. Cassidy.
Please, because I've still got a couple quick notes to write.
Okay. I agree with just about everything that Joe said. Well, to me, it was attractive when this came forth to us 7 months ago, was that it was an existing golf cart on the island already, so it wasn't impacting any additional golf carts. I think as City Manager Ben said, yes, you have a driver that knows the roads, knows where to go, where not to go, and he can talk to the people. I walk around this town a lot, and it's amazing the number of times when the driver's holding the map and looking at the map and wondering where the hell he is. I mean, geez. So, and I also agree that there's two issues here: the issue of Steve's renewal, and the issue of what we do with the future ones. And I would like to separate the two, and because we need to do the transportation review and all that kind of stuff to talk before we intelligently talk to the second point. But I think the first point we should probably vote on if it's everybody's pleasure.
Sorry. Well, I have just a couple concerns. This is obviously one of the items on the discussion docket for me for the transportation study. Makes me very uncomfortable to make a decision on this until we've had an opportunity to go through the many items that I've had on my docket, as Joe alluded to. When I went back and reviewed the meeting, I believe when this was discussed initially at the prior council where Steve was granted the temporary permit, it was a very contentious meeting, and there was a lot of just trying to come down from previous discussions in the meeting, and I don't feel as though this was really thought through or really had an opportunity to go through some of the concerns with it before it was granted. But that being a temporary permit, you know, certainly now we're at the point that we're at now. I am not sure what the fair way to extend this would be, whether it's a 3-month extension, a 6-month, or whether we wait till after we do a transportation review. Some of my concerns, one, I know I had learned today that Mr. Wooley has exceeded the insurance requirements that the city would require to begin with, so I appreciate that. I have a big concern as we're in discussions with other members of the community about not having a place of business where you collect your guests, do waivers or whatnot. Where is that happening? Is that happening on city property, et cetera, et cetera? I also am just concerned about what sort of gates this opens to how many people could just decide that they want to come forward and start providing this service, how it impacts current businesses, how it impacts a transportation company, and those that have been in business in general. So I'm really at a loss as to how to proceed. I agree with you, Ole, that maybe separating the two issues is a good way to go. However, I am absolutely not comfortable granting any sort of permanent ability at this time.
Let me ask if there's any public that wants to comment to this. Other people in the... Oh.
Misa Bradley, 107 Pebbly Beach Road. I also have an application that was held over. And so I think free enterprise is great, but one of my main concerns, like Cindy said, is not having a business location. So does that make every curb in town now a business location? So, and I think we're opening up a precedent for things like that to take place.
Thank you.
Lisa Lavelle, I would just, he does have a business license through the end of the year. He paid for an annual business license, so that might be one stopping point to say we will do it temporary until the end of the year, possibly. I don't have any vested interest in his business, but I'm just thinking through that he's already paid for that. My other question would be for you to be mindful in the number of businesses that are moving into sales by phone and mobile, what that means for the community, how you do that if someone doesn't have a storefront but does have a business. It's something to look at. So, because I don't think it's going away, unfortunately, or fortunately, actually. It provides for more business, I think, so.
Michael Ponce, being on the council when we did approve the temporary, I really don't think that we thought it all the way through. So I would recommend that you look at it a little bit more. I think you're doing a great job, but I don't think we looked at all the items associated with it. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Connie Stewart, Catalina Transportation. I've actually had no problem with him doing his tours at all. My only concern would be the other people that you would approve, because I don't think they would be quite as mindful or diligent in the way he particularly does business. So that would be my only concern, and that they do have actually a place of business to where people can call and go to if that's what they want to do. That's it.
Thank you. Other comments?
Thanks.
Judy Greer. I did use Mr. Wooley's business at one time and found it, perfectly reasonable and fascinating and interesting and a little bit different. I would object if, for instance, a golf cart company came up and did this, or a hotel did this. Those people already have businesses. I think for a small individual like Joe's, the bicycle thing or something like that, I think we need to encourage that and keep it small and only to people who have this small endeavor going. I think that's kind of what Catalina is known for and good for, and I think this exactly exemplifies that particular thing. So if you allow more to come in, I think you need to really look at who is doing it and keep it small. But I would encourage you to keep this one going.
Thank you. Part of my concern is your concern about, and I mentioned it to Mr. Wooley, on Casino Way, we have the ghost tour, and that's part of this whole transportation thing. And, we've got the ghost tour guide parked there. I don't know if it's 24/7, but it appears to be. Appears?
Halloween's coming too.
So, I think the are two issues as well. I concur that there's a lot we want to do on transportation, but yes, then there is the question of the here and now. And I'm kind of like, it has seemed to work pretty well, and maybe I think until I guess I'm willing to say until we get either a deadline, like until we get the study done, or when the business license expires, maybe to let him continue his operation. That's just my answer.
And let me just give you the standards. The standards are: the applicant has presented facts demonstrating a need for the requested vehicle. The requested vehicle is appropriate for the intended use and necessity. For the property functioning of the business, that the requested vehicle is not going to have a deleterious impact on traffic congestion, safety, noise, or air pollution. In view of the size and nature of the streets of the city and the character of the city itself, the requested vehicle will not have a deleterious impact on public safety, public health, safety, and welfare, and there's not a suitable alternative for this particular business. So basically, this is a case-by-case thing. So even though you grant this one, if that were be your inclination, each permit has to be considered on a case-by-case basis until the standards are changed. If you change them. And you can put conditions of approval, which we did on the initial thing. And one thing to think about is if the council believes that this particular operator has operated well without any issues, it may be appropriate to find out from him what he's done right and what he's done wrong, and then use that in consideration of future permits, because he's got more experience than anyone in operating this type of business.
Well, and then with regard to Cindy, your comment also about the location and the signing up. Do you have people sign a waiver when they get on your... No. Might that be something that should be important?
It's his liability.
He has more than adequate insurance, and he indemnifies the city. So I feel, from the city perspective, I mean, that doesn't. Well, I think he's covered. Is what I would say.
But doesn't the parasail have the same thing?
Because you can kill yourself.
That's a different type. Yeah.
Oh, but he could kill them.
I mean, a waiver is really the decision of the business owner that would determine whether or not they want to indemnify themselves. Basically,
we feel covered from a city perspective.
Okay. So your folks really aren't signing up, like they would be for the parasail, where the other bit the business location for signing up.
But there's maybe not if you're obviously saying, Steve, that you're not signing waivers, but you must be collecting money for the services that you're providing, which is still conducting business.
Okay.
So maybe not signing a waiver, but you would. I'm assuming you're not doing these for free. No. So that there is a conducting of business.
I see. Yeah.
But there's a lot of those businesses in town. Taxi cabs collect money, fishing charters collect money.
Right, and they all have a place of business.
But they don't transact the business there. He could call his home his place of business.
I'm sorry?
He could call his home, his residence, a place of business. I have a question for the city attorney, if I may.
Yes, you may. You're so polite.
I try to be. Could we extend the permit subject to the completion of the transportation study?
Yes.
Would that work for you, Cindy?
Mm-hmm.
Would it work for you?
I'm good with that. Wait, we're supposed to call for the vote. Excuse me.
What?
You're not
No,
supposed
but
to
I think he's just sort of
straw polling here.
Yeah.
And would you entertain a motion?
Entertain me.
That's Billy's job. I move to extend Mr. Wooley's permit to a month after the completion of the transportation study. So we get a chance to do the study and digest it and act in the council meeting.
With the same conditions as presently
It's the
on
same
the permit.
present
Any
conditions.
conditions to add? Are we good with the current?
No, I'm good for that. I just want to make a comment before we call for the vote. So, do we have a second from someone else?
Oh.
Okay. Is there a second?
Oh, yeah, I second it, absolutely.
Okay. Public comment again? More public comment? Okay. Call for the vote.
Wait, no.
Oh no, you've got one.
Sorry. I just want to be very clear and say that my only issue is not a place of business. My issue lies far greater than that, and that is the implications to other businesses, how this will affect transportation in general, how this will affect other applications in process, and what we actually want to do transportation-wise. So I just want it on the record. It's not, my issue is not just a place of business.
No. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Call for the vote.
4 ayes, 1 abstention. Councilmember Hernandez.
I'm going to go get Richard.
Rich, get out of the bathroom.
Hey, Danny.
Levity's good, though.
have to report to Rich? Okay.
Yeah, to wake me up.
Okay. Item number 12.
Yes, Mayor, the next 4 items are all from the Planning Department, so Amanda Cook, our Planning Director, will be presenting the staff reports. Number 12 is the consideration of a water conservation, rationing, planning, and building application policy and direction to clarify the policy by amendment to the municipal code. So this discussion originated at the last Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commission made some tweaks, and Amanda's here to give you a brief staff report on this item. Thank you, Amanda.
Oh, sure. This is a policy that we're recommending that you adopt that will guide staff on how we handle development permits while we're in stage 2 water rationing. In the past, the city would not accept even a planning application, much less a building permit, if someone did not have a letter of water allocation from Edison that they would honor. Now that we're in stage 2, we've kind of gone back and looked at the tariffs, and they talk about building permits and serving those properties once they're built. So the Planning Commission talked about developing a policy, and I'm just going to read through it really quick so that the public knows what we're talking about. It says that during any stage of water conservation rationing as defined by Edison, where Edison prohibits new water allocations or prohibits connections to its water system, the City Department of Planning and Building will accept and process applications for entitlements, this would be typically your planning approvals, for development whether or not a freshwater allocation is provided at the time the application is filed. The City Department of Building and Planning will process applications for building permits, whether or not a freshwater allocation is provided at the time the permit is issued, but only if the following applies to the work being permitted. That the project does not require installation of a fire sprinkler system. That the project, if it does require a fire sprinkler system, Edison will confirm in writing that they will provide sufficient fresh water to charge the sprinkler system while the structure is unoccupied. The applicant has certified that no connection to Edison's freshwater system is necessary because the applicant will provide all fresh water and that all discharge permits into the sewer system has been received prior to the commencement of construction. That's referencing desal plants. Or that no water allocation is needed for the project. And I want to explain just a little bit more what we're talking about fire sprinkler systems. One of the issues that the Planning Commission talked about was, well, if we're going to let someone go ahead and build a building and take the risk that it will be completed while we're still in water rationing, we don't want an empty structure sitting there with a fire sprinkler system that's not functioning. So if this project requires installation of a fire sprinkler system, we would not issue a building permit unless Edison says, yes, we will give them enough water to charge the sprinkler system and keep it charged while that building's sitting there waiting for an occupancy permit to occupy because there's fresh water available. We are moving in this direction because we have some projects out there that are kind of hanging in the balance in our water stage situation. The museum, I believe, is in that situation where their water allocation is at risk. We have some homes at Hamilton Cove that are trying to be under construction. We have a duplex up on Olive that have planning approvals, but we're willing to go forward with construction and take the risk that water would be available. So that's the policy that we're proposing. It's a policy document, and so we're here for you to talk about it and see what you want to do.
Getting back, I have a question on your fire suppression systems. Usually, the fire suppression systems are on a separate meter, so it really shouldn't impact their regular meter to service their commercial building or their residential.
And
so it should just come off of its own meter.
Right, but I think Edison still has to agree to set that meter and service it, even though our hope is that it only uses the few gallons that it takes to fill the pipes and not that it ever actually goes off. It was been explained to me that sometimes they can put them on a separate meter or sometimes they're on a single meter, but then when the fresh water leaves the meter and comes into the house, there's a separate line that feeds the sprinkler system.
Correct.
And they actually install that in a way that the homeowner can't
Shut it off.
shut it off,
Correct.
because we don't want them to shut off their sprinkler system. We want them to keep it online.
Correct. That was just my question for that.
Would anybody like to comment? Mike or anybody out there, or Mark or anyone?
Mike Flynn, Hamilton Pacific. We're involved with building the museum as well as Hamilton Cove. We've been working with, I just had a meeting with Ron last week, talking about, as the tariff reads, that it's a health, safety, and welfare aspect that Edison can provide even in a phase 2 water rationing. So what that means is that you can have a meter installed for new construction at the time that you're building, but you can't turn it on when you have a certificate of occupancy. And the purpose of that meter is only for just the testing of the fire sprinklers and for any testing that has to take place within the home. So that provides for the health, safety, and welfare aspect of this. The second part of it is that in regards to freshwater, we've been working with Ben, we've been working with the city on trying to come up with an RO system, a desal plant that would work, a package plant for the individual homes. And one of the issues that's come up is that there is an abundance of water being treated out of the harbor that precludes capacity to be there and available for homes today because of the dissolved solid content in the sewer plant. But we've looked at that, we've analyzed it, there's a number of things that we can do, and again, we're working with the city to try to come up with that to be able to have the capacity for homes.
Well, let me ask, if you're working on the RO systems for these new homes, correct?
Correct.
Do you also then still have to have a fresh water hookup for that house? You'll have 2 sets of pipes?
You have it as a backup.
You have freshwater's backup?
Backup as a freshwater backup. In the event that we ever come out of this phase 2, phase 1 water rationing, and there's a water source that the Edison starts running the desal plant. Then we have water, then all of a sudden, then we're out of the phase 2, phase 1 rationing, then we'd be able to, owner would have the opportunity to be able to hook up to a meter.
Can I ask a question to Mike?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Flynn, do you have your own saltwater system at Hamilton, right?
Yes.
So my concern is if we adopt this with number 3 in there, is that we're basically approving RO units in Avalon, and we have no mechanism for either the sewer discharges nor the salt water.
We do. We have it. It's already in our code under the water quality provision for discharge. They have to get a discharge permit into our sewer system.
Has anybody done that?
Well, that's the
No,
problem.
they haven't. They haven't done it yet, but we are implementing.
We are working with ES on that very thing because, we're aware of a request
But we don't have the flip side of that, the water they process, salt water.
Say that again, sorry?
You're using 5 gallons of salt water to make 1 gallon of fresh water. And our saltwater rate system is not set up to figure that in.
Right. The system was not engineered considering desalination plants in homes. I would agree with that.
So it's our sewer treatment plant that processes all of this water.
Brine.
So it comes, the brine. Yeah, so it comes down to the city paying for this. Is there extra fees that are involved in people that have their own home desalination plants?
So we're working on this right now. As of this afternoon, and I hope, Mike, this isn't news for you, but ES had advised us that they need to study the salinity in the plant. They're over the next couple of months, they want to review that before we start issuing any type of discharge permits. They think that ultimately we probably could go that route, but they want to take a look at what they're seeing with the drought. They've advised that they're seeing just a higher rate of salinity, and it's something they want to make sure that they can handle. So we've got Mike, and we've got Fairview Terrace, and the Hermosa Hotel, a number of folks that have come to us saying, hey, we're interested in pursuing this, and our message is, okay, we appreciate that, we understand it, we think it's going in the direction that city can support, but we just want to make sure that our plant can can handle this. So that's what we're doing right now.
And
also figure a way to
also,
charge for the salt water.
Right, metering of the salt water and other things, right?
we also have the cease and desist, and part of it is that we're limited by what we can put through the system, and we need to make certain that we are complying with that because this water is different.
Yeah,
As
and
well as what we can discharge, sorry, Joe,
No, that's okay. Excuse me.
from the outfall from the plant
Correct.
back into the ocean.
Right.
We have to go to the state to get permission to increase
To
it.
put the brine back in this one.
Yes and no.
Now, is there any systems going now in the housing, in residentials?
Yes.
That we know about?
We're aware of a few.
Well,
I'm sure that there's a bunch that we're not aware
I was just curious. I just didn't know. I mean, I did know, but there is a couple of systems out there in the residence, correct?
We find out from real estate advertisements and other means, but yeah,
I
there
kind of
are some
stumbled
out there.
across a couple when I was doing inspections.
We're looking at that.
Okay.
We're looking at what actions we need to take.
Just out of curiosity.
Because basically we had to figure out what it takes for our system to process the water and how big the systems are, because they can be anywhere from 500 to several thousand gallons, correct? I mean, home systems, fairly small home systems, but when it comes down to it, the hard part of the whole thing is getting rid of the byproduct, which is the high salinity water, right? That's what we're processing at our sewer treatment plant, correct? And we're already running at what, 95% during peak season?
Well, there's two issues. There's, of course, the volume, which I think is what you're speaking to, council member, but then there's also just the percentage, the ratio of salt water to fresh water. So those are the two things, high volumes and then how much of it.
So under this policy, if adopted, right now we're taking a temporary hiatus on allowing people to put in these units, but you could still proceed to build if you're eventually going to use fresh water if and when it comes available. At the Planning Commission, I know there was Pete Edwards and there may have been someone else speak about they were willing as developers and the builders to take the risk that they'll build a home, it's their risk that they have to wait 1, 2, or 3 years before it can be sold if there's not a water allocation. And the Planning Commission felt that it was fine to let them take that risk as long as the public health and safety wasn't damaged by having those sprinklers there, so that you have an unoccupied building so that if something bad happens, the sprinklers put out the fire.
Are the sprinklers the first thing that goes up in a house? When you construct a house, is it the first thing you put in?
No.
Okay, so
It's quite a ways
you got the
down.
frame, you got the what?
Then you go to the plumbing, sprinkler.
Yeah, you don't
goes
want
in.
And then you do the drywall.
Right, you don't want to test plumbing after the fact when
Yeah,
everything's
you don't
all
want to put
done.
plumbing
I
after
mean,
that.
so you have I guess my thing is you have this frame and there's a fire, and you got no water around the property at all other than the fire department
And
that'll
that
put it
happened.
out with salt.
But that would be the same right now, even with an allocation.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Because you don't put the pipes in.
Well, in Hamilton, we have fire hydrants already set up for any kind
Yeah,
of fire.
I mean, that's just my ignorance of construction, of
And that
course.
happened.
And I just wanted to clarify, certainly in light of communications received today, that what you just spoke to has not actually just become aware to us today. This has been something that even I have met, and certainly Mike Flynn has met with Environ Strategies for several months now regarding these systems.
What I'm speaking to
what our
specifically.
system can hold, and because we haven't had enough testing done. I mean, this has been in the works for months.
If I could clarify, no, it's not specifically going down the path of trying to develop a discharge permit. In doing that, that is when today we're advising, Environ Strategies advises that we're not comfortable with even proceeding in developing a permit until we do a little more studying, and we'd like to have a couple months to do that. So we're certainly aware of the challenges that this poses to the plant and the considerations that we have. It's just specifically on the topic of developing a discharge permit, because we told Mike and others that's something that we will require.
Okay.
So that's the
it's just
nuance.
The permit. Okay.
Yes.
Our current ordinance is broad enough when we did the update to comply with the cease and desist to cover it, but now we want to develop more specific standards for the RO units.
Yeah, makes
Which would probably include some fees to cover,
With the infrastructure.
the city's cost.
May I ask a question? Do we know what the museum is? Are they planning on putting an RO system in the museum? Do we know? I mean, not the museum, the trailhead. What do we know what the Conservancy's planning?
I'm not aware of a plan for a desalination unit. I know that they are looking to have a LEED certified building and that they're looking to harvest rainwater and things like that, but I don't believe that they're planning on having a desal unit there.
Yeah, my big question would be what the recovery of the wear and tear that's gonna go on to the city's system. I mean, because you know, we got an infrastructure problem. This water is gonna go through the infrastructure of Avalon. It's gonna wear and tear on our system. It's easy to make a promise and say, yeah, we'll make sure we reimburse the city. I mean, we need to think about our system now before we start accepting too many of these applications for people to come in, put their desalination systems online. The wear and tear is on our system. So basically what it comes down to is the city is going to be responsible for processing all this water that's pretty invasive. It's pretty invasive water. It tears down the system. It's very concentrated. It would be nice if we could be reimbursed in advance for the work that we need to do to our systems. I mean, is this a proposal here? Does this have anything? Does this speaking anything to that, to where we get money up front so we can go ahead? No, it doesn't.
Like the development fees or something. That
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right, so I think we could address those type of things with the discharge permit. There could be considerations that we make as part of that.
Let me ask you another question. We haven't had our meetings. I guess we're going to have another meeting on Thursday on the water reclamation, and this comes up a lot. And when you sealed off those things and we saved a couple 100,000 gallons of salt water.
That's correct.
I don't know if this is a policy thing. We need to bring that in to talk further about putting those flaps on that are like $100,000 worth of flaps to keep all of that salt water from coming through our system. Would that be something to think about? Because that would help the RO people out if we didn't have all of that extra. But shouldn't we kind of deal with that first?
We have a number of items like that we're bringing forward as part of this proposed budget.
Okay.
For you to consider some capital improvements that we think would be beneficial for the infrastructure as a whole.
When I first read it, I thought, well, why give them permission to build something they don't have any water? And I just went, well, that's a slam dunk. Now I'm confused.
Madam Mayor,
To me,
Madam Mayor,
if we
can I say something? Can
Yeah.
I just say something real quick? I don't think that anybody, right now, if you look at your sewer plant, my understanding, and this is what I understand, is you have a discharge permit for 1,200,000 gallons per day. Currently, that's the most that you can put out into the ocean on a daily basis. There's also a parallel restrictor that's on it, and that's the dissolved solids that can go from that water into the ocean. Right now, you're peaking out because of the amount of salt that's in it.
Right.
So in thinking through this thing, we went back. You have 2 meters. You have meters that show the dissolved solids, and you also have a meter that shows the amount of volume that comes in and out of the sewer treatment plant. And from downtown to the sewer treatment plant, it takes about 45 minutes for the fluid to get to that point. So we looked at it, and it doesn't make sense, because you could go backwards and you say, okay, if all the toilets in Avalon are on salt water, how much water is that? Well, it's about 165,000 gallons of water per day. That's providing that they're working and they're not just running constantly like they are in so many places. But when you look at the flows, what it does is it coincides with high tides. So, and it's like 250,000 gallons. In peak summer, your outfall is about 700,000 gallons. So it's far below the 1,200,000, but the dissolved solids are very high. And the reason why the dissolved solids are so important is because of the salt. The bacteria won't live in a very, very salty situation, so it doesn't eat up the sewage and doesn't function. So when we looked at this, there was a bust somewhere, because 200,000 gallons a day, 250,000 gallons a day is not a cracked pipe. It's coming in from some huge orifice somewhere. So what we did is we got together with the guys at the sewer plant, got together with DPW, went around and looked at everything. There's 5 inlets that come in the harbor on the bulkhead. And what happens is on those inlets, there's low-flow diverters in each one of them. Those low-flow diverters that were installed are there so when it rains, the water comes down the storm drain, captures for the first couple of hours into the low-flow diverters and treated in the sewer plant. But then the orifice is wide open as it goes back out to the harbor. There's one check valve, but the check valve, if you look at high tides, all the covers are covered with water. And there's 250,000 gallons approximately a day, 200 to 250,000 gallons of harbor water coming back in the storm drains, going in your sewer treatment plant and being treated in your sewer plant and discharged in the outfall. Now, how do I know that? What I did is that I got together with the Department of Public Works. We took tractor inner tubes and we blocked every one of the storm drains. We did that for a 10-day period of time. The water dropped 200,000 gallons the first day and behaved consistently the whole rest of the time. So what is the solution? The solution is that when you've already got fresh water in your system, so if you stop treating the ocean, you're not going to have all that salt water come in. So there's an abundance of water that's available, or a capacity that's available by doing that. The correction is what they call a duckbill check valve. And what that does is that goes on the bulkhead, covers the hole, and what it does is it's shaped like a duckbill. So what happens, it allows water to flow out, but it doesn't allow water to flow in. Those run about $4,000 or $5,000 a piece, plus the concrete work that has to occur with them. And there's 5. But if you do that, day one, you're going to stop treating, a lot of water. Just to give you an example, 250,000 gallons a day is 91 million gallons of water, of fluid.
Yeah.
A house uses about 100,000 gallons. If you used it every day with a family of 4, you're going to get 300 gallons a day times 365, you're going to have 100,000 gallons of water. So, I mean, it's really, really disproportional. So it needs to be rectified. And Joe, what I was going to with that is that we're not looking to burden the situation. I think there's a number of things we can do to become more efficient and to treat it and lessen the burden that's on the system. Right now, you're getting a lot of sand that comes in those inlets, and your impellers and your motors are just eating up. I mean, I talked to the guys, they don't last long. So plus, when we did this, you saw in the early morning hours, the system actually shut off. So the electricity, all the other things that you're using that you wouldn't normally use in the wear and tear on the machinery will be huge. So.
Okay. Well, that was a good education.
Thank you.
Thank you. So back to the issue at hand.
Hi. I could be in favor of the proposal if we excluded paragraph 3. And so we continue the discussion on RO units and get the answers before we tacitly approve them.
Hey, let me ask another question. And then I would have a question about number 4. No water allocation is needed for the project.
That means that we will give them a building permit to build their project because it doesn't need fresh water.
Like, what would that be?
A deck.
I have a 3-bedroom house. I want to rebuild it with a 3-bedroom house. I already have the water allocation. There's no new water.
And so when they go to build, but they go to build that house that they tear down and they build it up, and they're going to need concrete.
Right,
That's a different thing, though.
Which needs water.
Which would fall under the tariffs for construction, so that's separate from this.
Bring the water in.
And they bring
Brought in.
So if you knock the new house down, you have water.
But what that would preclude is the fact that if I've got a 2-bedroom house and I take that down and then rebuild it with a triplex and adding more bedrooms to it, that would need additional water.
Right. So
Correct. And I just want to, for as far as paragraph 3, this policy does not issue anyone a discharge permit. I mean, it just says that when we're ready to issue discharge permits, that's an option under this policy.
But it doesn't talk about saltwater fees, it doesn't talk about development fees, and those are things I think need to be discussed before we are prepared to issue discharge permits or saltwater hookup fees.
And you could always add this back in.
Yeah, you can always add back in later.
Later on, that's true.
If I could add one more thing, Joe Callis says that there's no desalination at the trailhead project.
Oh, okay.
He's watching from home.
At the present time.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
Public comment?
That's right.
Public comment.
Oh.
I thought Mike kind of did it all. Okay. Is there a motion?
I'd be happy to move to adopt the water conservation, rationing, planning, and building application policy with the exclusion of 3, and possibly renumbering 4 to 3.
We'll consider that, possibly.
Okay.
We mean number 5.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second Ollie's motion.
Okay. Further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Call for the vote.
Four ayes, 1 no. Councilmember Sampson.
Okay, continuing in our planning world discussion, the next item, number 13, is the consideration of an ordinance amending the municipal code to establish an alternate planning commissioner position. Again, this has come from the planning commission itself. They tweaked our initial concept. We're recommending 1 additional alternate, and here's Amanda to provide you with the staff report.
As Ben said, the commission had talked about this. We have seen in the past where there have been more times than we are comfortable with where we could not seat a quorum because of conflicts or absences and items had to be held over. So the commission looked at a variety of other cities where they have an alternate commissioner that is appointed. And that commissioner, some cities, they only fill in to make a quorum, and other cities, they fill in for any absence. The Planning Commission looked at it and decided that we would really like to have someone, an alternate, that could fill in for any absence, and that way you have a better chance of having a full commission when you're considering items. The recommendation we made was that the alternate would be appointed just like a regular commissioner. They would have a 2-year term with, let's see, I don't think they took out the term limits. Then that commissioner would vote and attend every meeting and would be there available to act should there be an absence, either for conflict of interest or just a regular excused absence.
Any comments from the public on this? Before we get started, council?
My question is, if the alternate has to attend all the meetings, then why can't the regular commissioners attend all the meetings?
Which makes sometimes they don't because they're not on the island. Oftentimes with this also, we have a lot of conflicts. And so if there's a conflict, what this policy is also for is if someone has a conflict because their property is within 500 feet, the alternate can come in and vote. So it's for absences or conflicts.
Well, let me ask, would they have to be present, or they could sign in that they watched the meeting on television?
They have to be present.
They have to be present.
There's no calling in. Stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's no calling in.
No. Well, you
proxy
could-
vote, none of that. Calling in on the phone, right?
Well, the planning commission has that option now, so I guess if
they
it was a
do?
really extreme you have to publish where they're calling in from.
Really?
So, yes. So if there was a circumstance that required it, I guess you could have that happen, but they can do that now. So, for example, if Chuck is out traveling and Chuck agrees to call in from Waco, Texas, we put that on the agenda and he calls in, you can do it.
Unless we had a fill-in, then it wouldn't be necessary, correct?
No, he can always do it. If
He can still do it even if we have-
is a planning commission or council member. If you're away on a council or planning commission night, we can post the agenda where you are in another location for 3 days, just like a regular meeting, and you can call in.
But I think to council member's point, you wouldn't have to go through that charade necessarily if you had somebody who was ready to go as an alternate. You
That's what I would.
Yeah.
Right.
It would eliminate
That would
the
be
need
the
to do
purpose
that.
of this, correct?
Well, maybe that's a bit strong.
But that's the purpose of this, correct?
Yes.
So if he's here, he can't, well, I guess he could call in if you put it out. But-
We have a lot of conflicts in town, as we all
Sure,
know, and
sure.
it seems to be probably prudent to have this person waiting in the wings for those instances. Other cities do it. It seems to be helpful, so we thought it would probably be something you should consider.
We've had some instances over the last 5 years where the applicant shows up for the meeting ready to go, and we don't have a quorum. And so we say, sorry, we can't conduct business. And so, or the applicant comes here, you pay your fee or whatever, you're ready to go, you have the neighbors all set to go, everyone shows up for an item, we don't have a quorum. This allows us to have a quorum when we need it.
Also, planning commissioner in training.
Well,
it's true.
Depending on who the alternate is, yes.
How's the alternate selected? Same process as
through us?
a regular commissioner?
Yes.
I have one question, or not a question, just a comment on section 9-103, officers. The selection should occur biannually in election years at the first planning commission following the seat of a newly appointed selection. Okay, no. I lied. I'm sorry. Oh, I know what it is. One thing that's not, and Amanda talked to it, there was going to be something about term limits in here, and then they decided not to include it in there. And I personally...
I think I misspoke, Mayor. The alternate will have a 2-year term with a 2-year limit. So they could serve a maximum of 4 years. The alternate, yes.
Yes.
They chose not to impose term limits on the chairman and the vice chair. They chose instead to elect them every other year, that they would have to reselect their chairman and their vice chairman. So if they wanted to move the gavel around, they would have an opportunity to do that every other year.
And was it in, what did it read in the code prior about the chairman position?
I think they were supposed to elect annually.
And it hasn't been done in how many years?
1. I think they voted last year.
I think they've done it. I can remember it almost every year they're having that election. It's the same.
Well, it would be every year for 2 years, or was it every year for 2 years?
It was every year. It was every year. They were doing it every year.
Well, then I would like to include something about term limits on the chairman position.
Okay.
I know it's up for discussion, but there, for the exact reason somebody just said, there are people who may want to advance from planning commission and to get that experience as the chair. And if there's term limits, maybe they would be guaranteed that there would be some kind of a turnover. It's just kind of like I felt about when running. I personally believe in term limits for even us, but we're not there yet. We haven't discussed that one yet. But so I would like to introduce that there be some term limits set on the election every 2 years, but then also term limits on that chairperson.
That is your prerogative.
I mean, that's just my comment.
As opposed to term limits, councils in the past and councils now will have the roving chair, or that every year,
every 2 years,
or every year, in some cases, the chair changes.
Changes over.
That's great too.
And that way you do get the turnover. You move it around the table.
So everybody gets it.
I like that. I like that. Everybody gets a chance.
I do want to just interject from 6 years' experience as a planning commissioner that there has been, I think, two times during that period where we were hard pressed to even get anybody to apply for the planning positions. So I just want to take that into consideration when we're discussing terms, that oftentimes we may have somebody who's willing to serve, and we're very grateful that somebody is willing to serve.
I can understand that too.
And in regards to the term limits for the chair and the vice chair, a lot of the planning commissioners don't want to be the chair or the vice chair. And it seems like they have continuously elected Bruce to be their chair. And since it's the way it's set up and they pick who their chairs are, since they're appointed by you, you would make the decision as to who's on that commission. So I don't see why you would have to put a term limit on how long they serve as chair. Since they police themselves and they appoint themselves, and they vote amongst themselves to do that.
We also did, just to enlighten on the process of the meeting when we were discussing this, did actually have term limits included in the original draft. Discussed it, brought it back the second time, and chose after discussion to remove the term limits for the very reason that Michael just stated. So, of course, it's at your discretion, but I think that there's enough responsibility, and if someone did want to step into that chair, they wouldn't feel any difficulty in appointing themselves or asking to be voted on for that position. So,
Let me ask you a question. What do you think about the roving concept that he suggested? So then if somebody did want to do it, it would be, and then if somebody didn't, they didn't have to rove in, but everybody would get an opportunity?
I think it's not necessarily a bad idea. I think the biggest assistance that the chair and the co-chair, the chair pro tem, offer is that they have the experience of actually running the meeting. They have the experience of previous decisions that may help guide or provide, I don't know, beyond saying leadership, provide some insight into why certain decisions were made. I think what's nice is that we all do have the opportunity to speak up when we choose to, just like you guys do. It doesn't necessarily stop anyone from speaking because a certain person is chair or not chair. So, I don't know. I think that people would like to get experience too, and I think if they want to, they absolutely can choose to hop into that seat. But I think we kind of went through that discussion as well, and after having it in there originally, decided it was not something that impacted the commission negatively. There's not really a downside of a chair choosing to be put back into that position if they so choose and if the commission so decides.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. But my thing about term limits, though, again, it's like the Pope. You can be there forever. And so, you know, the Pope has a lot of wisdom, but there's some other people out there that the next guy in line has a lot of wisdom too. So that's why I don't care if it's 16 years. I think there needs to be some kind of term limit, and I also like the roving. The roving.
Isn't that something we can implement?
That's our job.
I mean, if that's what we feel strongly enough about, and it would be good, and it would be healthy for the planning commission to have that in place.
Well, just like we can rotate in and out, but we can get elected in and out. But these,
we're here for
they're here for the duration.
Well, you couldn't remove them. Yeah, you by a majority council vote, you can remove a commissioner.
I know. When was the last time that happened? I mean, it's almost like being Pope.
In answer to Council Member Sampson's, you can, if given direction by the council, I will write in term limits in a roving policy. And then I will read that tonight so that you don't have to have this come back again other than for adoption. Or you can, in the selection of the planning commissioners, because remember, all the planning commissioners are chosen by the council, you can say in your meetings with them, do you believe that this should rotate and appoint people that will do that? You can do it either way. If you want me to, I can put it in the statute. It's very simple to do.
Mayor, can I ask Councilman Cassie a question, please? Cindy, you were on the planning commission for a while. Did you ever have any desire to be? I mean, is that something that you ever wanted to do, to be the chairman?
No,
of that
actually.
commission?
Thank you for asking, because I was going to say, speaking after Lisa, I did not. I was obviously a commissioner for 8 years, and then 2 years prior to that was appointed to the Harbor Commission, and at no time did I actually have the desire. I took the opportunity to absorb from Bruce Fertig, who's been the chair for the Planning Commission, and just try to learn and absorb from him. But it is it is not necessarily an easy task. As Annie, you probably know, coming in as mayor and running a meeting, it's not an easy task. There's additional responsibilities on your shoulders. There's an opportunity where you could maybe be more concerned about running the meeting than, you know, maybe making your own notes or whatnot. But for me, I never had any desire to be the chair. My next comment would be that I appreciate Lisa's comments, because I really believe that if the commission originally put this in and then amongst the commission they've determined that that wasn't something that they wanted, I really feel that we entrust them to give us their feedback on, you know, how the commission should work. And then again, I spoke to the fact that sometimes it's even hard to get people to want to participate as a planning commissioner. So I just think the council has an opportunity every 2 years to appoint or not appoint. So if the council felt that somebody had done their time, that the council could choose not to appoint somebody who'd been a commissioner for a period of time. And then again, they self-police as far as chair and vice chair.
That was not a unanimous vote, though, was it? Do you recall, Amanda?
I think it was unanimous. Once we discussed it, it was a unanimous vote. The other point that I was going to make also is when the discussion about alternate chair came, or alternate members came up, I of course started checking with people. I haven't found one person yet that is interested in the position of alternate planning commissioner. So I think there's people out there for sure, but I think just getting an additional person to be here for meetings once a month with the amount of learning and the reading that is involved is going to be a challenge already. So just to let you know on that point. But yeah, the decision was unanimous with everyone. And I believe, I think with the exception of Chuck, we were all here. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your pleasure?
I just want a little clarification more on the alternate. If one of the commissioners is out of town, or can't be present, say we put in alternates. If somebody comes, the alternate's at the meeting, the other person is on the mainland, wherever, who gets to vote? The alternate person, or does the person get to call in and make a vote? I'm still kind of, a lot of shenanigans could happen here, I think.
The law is that if you cannot be physically in Avalon,
correct,
whether you're a council member or planning commissioner, we can do a telecommunications notice.
Right.
Where we notice it in whatever location you're going to be during the meeting, and you call in from that and you participate just as if you're a regular member, just as if you're here. There are two limitations on that. Limitation number one is that the notice at that location be for as long as the notice of the regular meeting. So it's 72 hours. So if you know the hotel that you're going to be at, if you're going to be on vacation, you have to, it has to be noticed at that location. The second thing is whatever that other distant location is, has to be open to the public. So in other words, it's like you're having a meeting there and people can come in and participate in that meeting. The last thing is a minor thing, but all votes are taken via voice vote. You don't have all ayes or nays. It's a roll call vote. Okay. But that can happen. But I would say, given the fact that we have 7 commissioners on the planning commission, I'd say usually at 1 or 2 meetings, well, at least at 1 or 2 items every agenda, there's a conflict. Whether it's location or you're working for or do business with one of the applicants. Okay. And so no matter where you are, you couldn't participate.
Okay, but you're asking, can they have their own opinion, or do they have to have the opinion of the guy who wasn't able to make it? Is that what you're asking?
I'm just asking who gets to vote if we have an alternate to come in. Like he says, we have to notify them to call in, right?
Right.
So To me, then why do we need an alternate?
Well, I think
Why do we need an
we've only
alternate?
ever had one
Have we had a
time,
call-in?
Once.
Yes, we have.
Bruce.
We have.
Yeah.
He said it was horrible. But we're upgrading all of our, maybe we've done it
We
twice.
had 2 call-ins in the 6 years that I know of. One was with Bruce, and he was actually, I'm not sure where he was, but we were learning how to do this process, and I believe he was in his home in the mountains, which was, we were learning.
Right.
The second time, I believe it was, it may have been Chuck who tried to call in, and we could not connect. So in that case, it would seem as though you would have an alternate step in right away, but 2 times in 6 years that I know of. But also, if the commissioner the commissioner who was traveling was calling in, then the alternate wouldn't be participating because the commissioner calling in would be. So you wouldn't have 2 votes. You would only have 1. It would only be the alternate commissioner would stand in if there was a conflict for a particular item.
Right, or the
whole meeting if somebody was missing.
If we had an alternate in that situation with Chuck, and Chuck couldn't connect, then the alternate could step in and fill, because Chuck couldn't participate.
Right.
And Chuck may not want to participate.
Well, and that happens quite often. And Chuck is a good example, who travels 2 months a year. So he misses approximately 2 meetings a year. So
quite often when commissioners are absent, they have not indicated that they would be in a place where they could call into the meeting. And so we have ended up just trying to function with a smaller group, and we may end up with like 4 out of 7 or 5 out of 7, because you still had a quorum to vote. I think they've only, in the times that they were trying to call in, we knew that we were going to have difficulty seating a quorum, and we were trying to make sure that we had a quorum for that item. With the alternate, it decreases the likelihood of being in that position.
Well, I'm excited that the council, or that the commission has decided to do the alternate. I think that's great. I just do have problems with your term limits and not doing something about roving. I think there might be some commissioners. I know I got a couple of calls, so I know there's some that have a concern, and so I would like to.
Scott said he could put
No,
that
he
on
could do
there.
that, but I don't know what the count. But it's what we all.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's your. I'll do whatever you tell me.
Right.
You have to tell me what to do. I can keep it the same, or I can add the.
I think for the health of the commission, in the spirit of just the fact that if there's a concern, or especially a community concern about it, I think we ought to keep the commission healthy and keep it uncontroversial. I mean, that is, we have somebody that can fill in for that alternate position. I mean, out of the other remaining 6 people on the planning commission, there's got to be 1 or 2 that may be able to fill in and want to fill in, for the simple fact that if something did happen to the commissioner, somebody else could actually fill in.
Right. Okay.
So I think it's kind of a good idea to implement that, and I would definitely be willing to bring that idea forward for a vote if we needed to do that, and it would
okay.
It's something that I would definitely consider voting on for sure at this point in the juncture.
So, council, what is your pleasure?
I would make a motion to approve staff recommendation as is, establishing an alternate planning commission position.
And waive all further readings.
And waive all further readings.
Other comments?
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Call for the vote.
2 ayes, Councilmember Cassidy and Olson, 3 noes, Mayor Marshall and Councilmember Sampson and Hernandez.
So what just happened?
So the
Proposed ordinance has failed.
The ordinance without term limits failed.
Okay, so I would like to recommend that, yes, we have the alternate. However, I would like a system where the chairperson roves and to be just, and however, I don't know how specific we have to be if we go, okay, who wants to be it this year? If it's as simple as that, I don't know if it can be that simple, but so I would like the roving one, and I would like to establish some term limits within the planning commission.
Why don't I suggest this?
Okay.
Why don't you discuss among yourselves right now how long you want the term limits to be, and how the roving is to work, whether it's it always going to rotate via the person with the most seniority after the chair gets a chance, or whether it's just that you can't be chair, you can only be chair for 2 years and then someone else has to take it, and then you can come back after that. Yeah. You decide among yourselves how you want to work that. Give me that direction, then we'll all take a well-needed and deserved bathroom break, and I will draft the ordinance, and then I'll read it back after the break. That way, we get it done tonight. We don't have to come back, and then we adopt the ordinance at the next meeting.
Okay, I'm just off the top. I would say 12 years on the commission.
How many? I'm sorry, I thought I misheard that.
12.
Oh, 12.
The regular, yes, the regular planning commission. I'd like everything you're doing with the alternate.
Okay.
But the substitute.
So as a regular commissioner, 12 years.
Okay. I would say 12 years. They can be off for 2, and then they can still come back, because they could come back at the next kind of appointment time after the next election.
Commissioners are appointed for 4 years.
Okay.
I know, but they could be gone for only 2.
Okay. Now this it's a little. The planning commission discussed. This is one of these weird lawyer things, so excuse me. The planning commission discussed limitations on the chair, not limitations on the length of the planning commissioners themselves. So if the council wants to consider limitations on the chair and the rotating of it, you can do that tonight and we can draft the ordinance. If you're going to expand that to go into something that the planning commission did not consider, which is overall term limits, then you can give direction and we go back to the planning commission and get their advice. The rule is basically the planning commissioner has to consider an idea for an ordinance before it goes up to you. So they didn't consider the overall term limits.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
To my recollection.
No, that sounds good. So, with regard to the roving chair, I would say 2 years, just kind of like the other thing is with the alternate. 2 years, and then I guess we're going to have to wait again until 2016 before it can be considered, because that'll be the next election. And then it'd be a 2-year. Bless you. It would be a 2-year term, or I don't know. Are you thinking, or let them sit there a little bit longer before they have to rove? Cinderella? Or you didn't vote for it. Or Joe?
Just listen to Lisa.
If they really want to do it, I mean, which they obviously, if they're up there, they're going to want to do it. They can let them get comfortable. Let them go 4 years. Then let's switch out. I mean,
go for 4.
Then they'll really get good at what they're doing, and they can be comfortable. I mean, I think it would be kind of difficult to hold
4 years as a chair.
As a chair, that's it.
That seems reasonable to me. Okay.
But would you entertain an evolution where the chair can serve for 4 years and then the vice chair becomes the chair?
There you go.
That's good too.
Like that.
That's good, because we always have the out that we can remove them from the commission if we want.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Ben, do you have an opinion? Can we ask? I know she's not.
I do. I'm of the opinion that, and this is one person's opinion, okay, that it is a little bit difficult to find those who are willing to serve. I think that if you find somebody that wants to be in a certain capacity and their colleagues think it's in the interest of that body, that I'd be inclined to respect that. But again, this is one man's opinion. I think that you have the ability currently to remove people. I need to tell you that in general, I'm not a fan of term limits because I think that they're redundant. But that's my opinion, and only an opinion.
I understand term limits in positions that we're seeing because the general public can come up and vote. But nobody's campaign, I don't know. I just have a seat on a commission I feel a little more strongly about. I'm starting to go your way on the other thing. So you're, okay, so where are we? Come on, kids.
Okay, I like Councilman Olson's idea that the chair can rove into the position of the chairperson of the planning commission, but being that Councilman Cassidy said she was there for 8 years and she didn't have a desire to do it, I don't think we should make that person do that. And we should have a policy that can excuse the chairperson if they don't want to assume that position.
So if the co-chair doesn't want to be
the vice chair
doesn't
want to be the chairman, well then we shouldn't make them do it. But we should absolutely in the spirit of keeping the planning commission healthy. If somebody else wants to assume that position, they're welcome to it. If the vice chair doesn't want to, is that getting too complicated? But it's leaving it open. What do you think, Council?
I can figure it out. Just give me direction.
Okay.
I was just going to say, the 6 years I was a commissioner, nobody wanted that seat. So I'm not.
I have right now a 4-year limit on chair. With after the end of the 4 years, the sitting co-chair will become the chair.
And if the co-chair doesn't.
But with the ability to decline.
Right.
There you go.
And then if nobody wants, if like Cindy says, nobody wants to try the chair, then they can stay around.
Okay.
I mean, you got to have that proviso.
Right. It'll be there. Okay.
Well,
okay.
And I bet you can find, you know what? A lot of cities have the same exact ordinance regarding their planning commissioners. I know that.
What can I ask a question? What if something happens to the chairperson and let's say it's a health problem or a family, something family oriented, and there's a problem where they can't do it anymore?
Then he can resign as chair. He can resign as chair and have someone else take over the chair, or he can resign. Yeah, right. You can resign and the vice chair automatically goes up, and he can stay on the commission, or you can resign as a commissioner.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, if they have no choice, then there's got to be something in place that brings up the next person. And I'm saying I think this is a good idea because then it gets the person who's the co-chair basically in the right frame of mind, thinking that they might be in that position, so they would be more inclined to pay attention to what the chairman is doing. And if there was some kind of a disaster or an unfortunate circumstance, then there would be somebody who could step up and they wouldn't be totally out of place in that position. I think that's,
Good. Okay.
That makes kind of sense to me.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm getting confused too. So, the idea that you have a chairman, that he's going to be able to serve 2 years with a 2-year max. So he can, under the 2 years, with a 2-year term limit, that's a 4-year maximum service time, right? For the chair. 2 years, 2 terms, is that what we said?
The chair is appointed for 4 years.
Right, the chair is appointed for 4 years. And then you said the co-chair would be functioning almost like as a president-elect. He'd be a chair-elect. So if I'm understanding what you're saying, because I just want to make sure I understood.
Okay.
That the co-chair would automatically he would automatically already be next in line to be chair.
Yes.
Is that what I
Whoever
heard?
that co-chair is
Okay.
at the
Oh, now you're going to say, but if he's
Well,
already...
no. My question is, because they serve on alternate
Right.
rotating, you get 2 appointed this year and 2 appointed 2 years. If your chair and your co-chair are on the same rotation,
That works.
then you might lose both of them at the same time.
Well, that's right, and that's the council's prerogative. And you could
Okay.
have two new, you could have a new chair, you could have both of them out. You appoint. So it's part of the consideration of who you're
But
going to be
I could-
appointing is
Oh, yeah, 'cause
what
they
are
could,
the
okay.
positions.
And we're not, and then we're not putting term limits on. I mean, I wanted term limits, but then you could have both of them going. If we gave them a 12-year term limit, they could both go out at the same time.
No, you could choose not to reappoint somebody if they've been there 12 years.
Oh,
Every
I know.
4 years, you have to re-up them.
Yeah, okay. Okay. My biggest thing is to allow people the opportunity to grow and
I
to...
agree, and I think that's
my
what the
main thing.
commission
But I think
agrees.
that's there. I think if someone was to come forth as wanting to eventually evolve into the chairman,
I think it's a little more complicated than that.
I think we're getting complicated pretty here too. I will look forward to see what Scotty Boy drafts.
Okay. So while you're drafting,
Break time?
we're going to have a little break.
How quickly can you draft?
I'm drafting.
There's two more items.
And you could also go forward
No,
on other items and come back to this one,
I
but I'm
don't know
going to
if
try and
people
do
are
this.
sticking around for item 15 or 16, if you even know what they are.
So are we just going to continue this?
No,
item?
I'm just feeling for our audience if they don't feel like staying. On the 13th, the one we're working on now?
No.
We're on 15.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Well, then we're taking a break. Sorry, folks. You can take one too. Thank you. And we are back from break.
Okay, so the proposed language would occur in section 9-103, Officers of Commission. And the first sentence talks about that they're going to select these biannually after the first election year. In election years after the first planning commission meeting following the seating of a newly appointed commissioners. Then the proposed ordinance would read, planning commissioners may serve as chairperson for 2 terms for a total of 4 years maximum. Upon expiration of 4 consecutive years served, the vice chairperson of the prior commission shall become chairperson, and a new vice chairperson who has not previously served has not been the prior chairperson shall be selected by the planning commission. If the vice chairperson of the prior commission is not on the newly constituted commission, the commission shall elect a new chairperson and new vice chairperson. If the vice chairperson declines the appointment as the chairperson, the commission may select any commissioner as the chairperson and may also appoint any person as vice chairperson. The term limit of the current chairperson or one elected upon passage of this ordinance shall expire after the commission is seated after the 2018 city council elections. So what this means is that
Good Lord.
oh, we're good. It was
3
that
times fast, please.
I know is that the current chair, which will have an election, that whoever's that chair, that person's that term expires in 4 years, or 2018. That if whenever there's a existing commission, upon the expiration of the 4-year terms of the chairperson, the vice chair becomes the new commissioner, the new chair, unless that person has not been appointed to the commission, or unless that person doesn't want it.
Right.
Okay? If that person doesn't want it, or if that person has not been appointed, then it's up to the commission to decide.
And I think the intent is, and I don't guess you write intent in this, but the intent is for people to be able to move up the chain and get that experience as chair, and so.
Correct.
Okay.
And that if a person was the previous chairperson and someone else wants to be the vice chair,
right,
that someone else gets to be the vice chair. That person doesn't step down to the vice chair position.
Right.
So we'll
Yes.
type that up, and it'll be at the next.
Well, we'll see. Well, we still have to vote on it.
Yes. Well, that's the proposed.
And can I just assume that the person that would want to be chair would need to be voted into that position? If the votes were not there for that person to be chair, then it would go on to the stipulation of whoever else.
No. This would say that the person who's the vice chair automatically becomes the chair person.
Correct.
But you still would have to vote the vice chair in at some
vote
point
the
in
vice
this process.
At some point, right.
in.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And then we're going to just add subject to, I'm adding on officers of commission, I'm making one little change, subject to the language below, which incorporates all this.
Okay.
And I'm going to do this in a red line at the next meeting, so you see what the addition is.
Okay.
So the appropriate motion, if there's no public comment, would be to introduce and waive all readings of the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Avalon, amending Avalon Municipal Code sections 9-1.01 through 9-1.04 and adding sections 9-103 and 9-106, establishing an alternate planning commissioner position as discussed tonight with the additions.
Could you repeat that, please?
Kidding.
You better send that in an email.
I will send it to you in email. It's the title of it as amended with the changes discussed at the council meeting.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we implement the new guidelines for the planning commission that Scott has just read to us.
Was that clear enough, or should you say that the city council introduce and waive all readings of an ordinance?
His motion was to adopt the motion
Okay.
stated by the
We
city
need a
attorney,
second.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I can ask a question.
Of course you may.
So, in order for me to agree that I want an alternate planning commissioner, I would need to have a yes vote for the entire package.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the ordinance as presently presented.
Got it.
With the term limits.
Okay.
Okay. So moved and seconded. Let's call for the vote.
All ayes.
So the city attorney,
Where you going, Scott?
city attorney's going to take a brief bio break, but I think we can probably move right on.
Item 14.
Yes, again, another planning-related item. Amanda, congratulations. Come on up one more time. This relates to single-room occupancy facilities. This was taken off the August 5th council agenda following proposed changes from a resident, reducing, I believe, the, one bathroom for every 3 instead of 6 units. So we've now brought it back to you. Amanda will have a brief additional staff report for you.
Right. We took into consideration some of the public comments about the number of bathrooms that they were providing. The commission discussed it, and we kind of agreed that it was probably a good idea to require 1 bath for every 3 units in these single-room occupancies. The citizen had also asked that we talk about requiring a certain number of parking. I think you've received a letter from this, from Mr. Freeman reiterating his concerns about not requiring parking. When the commission talked about it, one of the zones where this is being allowed is high-density flats, which, as we all know, are small parcels and they're extremely convenient to downtown. And so instead of, with a conditional use permit, so commissions preferred to keep it with a, that the commission could set the parking requirements on a case-by-case basis, and that we wouldn't require a specific number of parking spaces. This is a zoning change that allows this to happen in this zone, but it's not approving any specific projects. Mr. Freeman did bring up some issues in his email about how this ordinance could have a unexpected effect on our inclusionary housing ordinance. And so I don't know if that is something that you want to talk about this evening, or maybe bring this back one more time. I think he made some valid points that there may be some unintended consequences of the language in this ordinance that could roll over into how people satisfy their inclusionary housing requirements. And the commission did not discuss inclusionary housing when we were talking about this ordinance. So I think that's the short version.
Well, if you are saying,
or if you have any questions.
I guess if you are saying in kind of an agreement there might be something that the planning commission didn't consider and look at, I would say,
well, if the council agrees that if they think that that's something that we should maybe talk about one more time, Lisa's here, she can probably give her opinion on it too. But I had not ever thought about the fact that if someone comes in and if someone is required to provide inclusionary housing, that it could be seen as a downside that they could choose to do SROs. I don't know that it necessarily is a downside. If you're getting additional employee housing and it's being constructed to the standards that we have outlined in this code, we have set up these standards so that it is a reasonable quality housing. That's why we talked about number of kitchens and number of bathrooms and minimum unit sizes. SROs, SRO, single room occupancies, and a lot of people in a lot of cities, these are thought of as hotels, where they've converted hotels into housing. They are seen as a way to provide a lower income housing, a lower cost housing, but still be a reasonable quality housing. It was a implementation measure of our housing element in the general plan, is that we try to facilitate code changes that would allow people to consider ways to provide affordable housing.
So let me ask a question, and I don't know the SROs. We know of places where they're rental units and they're putting 6 people in a 1-bedroom unit and charging rent.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just an enforcement problem, enforcement on our part, or are they getting away with stuff through anything?
Well, there's a couple answers to that question. The cities all over have a hard time governing occupancy. It's hard to define what constitutes a family or how many people can live in a house. I think in the building code, it's so many cubic feet per person, and it's not very much. When you have to get a conditional use permit for the use, then the city can impose conditions, just like we do on transient rentals. It's a conditional use permit. The conditions are you have a set occupancy for that unit. In our guidelines, I believe these are limited to 2 people in each unit. So because it is a conditional use permit, we do have the jurisdictional right to impose an occupancy and have an enforcement mechanism through that conditional use permit to monitor that occupancy, or at least enforce it. If there's complaints, we have some mechanism to go back and say, no, your conditions of approval were this.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Because there have been some things that the Planning Commission hasn't considered that were brought up in Mr. Freeman's letter, could we refer it back to the Planning Commission for them to consider it at its meeting in October, and then we get it back first meeting in November?
Hold it over.
I mean, that's sure. That's fine with me. What's the pleasure of the rest of the council?
That was going to be my recommendation as well. I did have one question that, Amanda, you might be able to answer. And I'm so sorry. Bear with me 1 second. Let me find my note. Section 916 3.3 in standards. Number 2, talking about bathroom facilities. If one bathroom is required for 3 units, why would there be 3 bathrooms required if there are 4 units? That was a little confusing to me.
Is that a typo? Where is that?
9-16.3.
Oh, that should be 2.
03.
Should be 2.
Okay,
2.
so then 2 bathrooms would be
Right.
required. Okay, so that one was confusing for me. And then I don't remember, so please help me. Isn't there, with regards to item 9-16.303 standards, isn't there already the ruling that these SROs aren't allowed vehicle permits or golf cart permits?
I don't.
Well, and I guess what I'm getting at is that most units have the ability to have a golf cart, but I think I just vaguely remember something about these particular units would not be allowed to have golf carts.
I think what you're talking about is because golf carts are registered to dwelling units, and dwelling units are defined as a living unit with a kitchen.
I'm looking at it.
And a bathroom
and a
habitable unit.
And so I think when we talked about it, the conversation was that because they don't qualify under the dwelling unit definition in the vehicle code, that they would not qualify for golf
What the
carts.
definition of a dwelling unit is: one or more habitable rooms which are intended or designed to be occupied by one family with facilities for living and the cooking and or preparation of food.
That's
Not
habitable unit.
habitable unit, not specifically a bathroom.
Right. So I think that because each unit, because they're intended to probably share a kitchen in most cases,
Right.
that it would not, each bedroom is not going to qualify for a golf cart. It's similar to the situation I think we have at the Westbrook, where they share a kitchen, and so only the manager's unit is able to register a golf cart. Everyone else who lives in those other units are not allowed to register a golf cart.
But could we specifically in this talk about no right to have cars? Because if they do adopt the definition of the SRO for the inclusionary, that would have a kitchen and it would have an inside bathroom and would have a sleeping area, and that would qualify.
You're correct.
Yeah, but we could preclude that through the ordinance.
That is correct, I would assume so.
Could we send that back as part of this with the planning commission to talk about, and you guys will remember?
That in the, well, so okay, my question for Scott is, does the SRO being allowed as an inclusionary unit have to be in this code, or would that be a language that would be in Chapter 11 in the inclusionary code?
I have to look at that language in Chapter 11 to see
Okay.
exactly what it says.
To see, because I don't think it calls out what kind of units.
Amanda will look at that, and then Ashley will confer with me.
I'm sorry I didn't bring the municipal code with me.
So did you get that
I
last
think
I got it.
the intent of my question is maybe we don't,
Right.
if we don't think it has to be in this code, then we perhaps we'd be bringing back Chapter 11 to you for a modification and not necessarily addressing inclusionary housing in this code section.
Is that?
It's, I am afeared that we're going to lose track of that sometime down in the future. And that if because our Chapter 11 doesn't define what the inclusionary housing units are.
We are required by state law to totally revamp Chapter 11 on inclusionary housing.
Why don't we stick it in this one first, and then we
can do
revamp
that.
it? 'Cause
We
that
can
way
do that.
We won't lose track of it.
We can do that.
Okay. All right.
Just clarification for me. So would it be as simple as just saying SR units do not qualify as inclusionary housing?
Well, or do you want the planning commission to opine on
Opine
the
on it,
issue?
because I think
Okay.
there's a segment of the workforce that a 330 square foot unit would be more than happy for. Okay, now we can do 15.
Moving on to item 15.
Okay. This is an item, item 15, adding administrative citations and penalties and enforcement provisions to the code. This is something I think we've talked to you guys about for some time, allowing us to take care of items over here with our sheriff rather than having them go over town. This comes to you from the city attorney, who will provide you with a brief staff report. Thanks, Scott.
Basically, what this does is it imposes another mechanism for enforcement of the municipal code. Currently, right now, if we wanted to initiate a municipal code, we would issue a criminal citation, and then to hear that, we'd be going over town along with the residents and the code enforcement officers who wrote the ticket. So you're actually having then less code enforcement here in the city. This ordinance gives you the option, and gives code enforcement the option of writing a civil ticket, which is collected here at City Hall. Much quicker, much easier to collect. There still is an appeal right. If you don't like it, you can appeal and have a hearing on that and have your money refunded. The ordinance proposes within 60 days. We can change it to be much quicker. This just gives us an alternate tool to enforce the city's codes. It's most cities have this, and they rely upon this more than criminal because it's quicker. And especially with Avalon being in the courts, now that our court decided to go away, it's much easier to enforce if we do it here, and you only get to court after you've appealed it and gone through several reiterations of that. It keeps it local.
So currently, if you have a vehicle ticket, we send that money over to the mainland, and they get a very small percentage of that. A traffic ticket. And it goes, and somebody said that had to go because it had to go through a third party or something is why we did that. I don't know. I heard that a while back. But we're going to do this ourselves. We're not going to end up saying, oh, we need to hire somebody else.
I think actually what you're speaking to is when you receive a parking citation, the third party that we have that processes the actual ticket and the receipt of payment for a parking ticket. This is for other types of citations and infractions aside from those.
I mean, is this something we're going to say, oh my goodness, now we're going to need somebody else to do that because is this something we're gonna see a lot of? I mean, what are we anticipating and what kind of?
This is going to give us some additional tools to more quickly and effectively go after somebody without making the offense, and Scott hates this description, but criminal, so to speak. I know I'm over generalizing, but
So failure to pick up dog poop, for example.
There's one, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
or,
But it's not gonna be failure to have a helmet on. That's the county's job.
violating the noise ordinance,
a good one.
violating the building ordinance.
Right,
You know,
working on a Sunday.
Working on a Sunday. Boom.
No
Right.
business license.
No business license, right.
Well, where does the appeal go?
The appeal officer, appellate officer.
Hearing
Just like the
officer.
hearing officer.
Hearing
Oh,
officer.
the same as the
Goes to a hearing
vehicle
officer.
hearing
Right.
officer,
Exactly.
but she
A
doesn't
similar-
handle things
Well,
like.
no, you'd have
the
someone
HR.
do that, and then we would assess there's going to be a filing fee to cover the city's cost of that appeal,
Unless they prevail.
unless they prevail.
It'll probably be a retired BBK attorney.
So when you prevail, getting back to that now, we talked about
Right.
this, Scott, already. It says 60 days to get your refund, blah, blah, blah. I think that's kind of a little long. If, case it is a bogus ticket and you appeal it, you put your money up front, I think people should be able to get their money back within a reasonable time. 60 days is a long time.
How about 2 weeks?
I would think no more than 2 weeks, 14 days at the most. I mean, if you're putting up your own money, I don't know. I'd want my money back if somebody appeals it and wins.
How about 15 days to make sure you follow in check writing cycle?
Do we have to check with finance on that maybe? or-
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be comfortable with 21 days, just and saying no more than 21 days. I would think that in most
Okay.
instances we could do it in 2 weeks. I just would want to give us an additional week just in case.
So no more than 21 days?
No more
but-
than.
But possibly you can get it in 10 days
Absolutely.
or 5 days, correct?
We would want to refund them as quickly as we could.
Okay, because I'd be a little upset if I won a case and I couldn't get my money for 2 months.
Absolutely.
So no more than 21 days and possibly sooner.
Absolutely, if we can, yes.
Okay.
It's always our goal to pay as quickly as we
live with
can.
Yeah.
Do we have to post exactly what the fines are on the particular ordinances that
We can put that in the fee schedule,
No,
right?
Actually, what this does is it says all the fines that are, all the criminal penalties or the fines that are in the ordinance are the ones that apply to this. But if there is not a specific fine or amount in the ordinance, then it's $100 for the first, $200 for the second, $500 for the third.
And so they don't pay, and then we refer to the city attorney to file a claim or initiate collection efforts.
Oh.
And plus we get $25 from the person. What does it cost to file a claim and initiate a collection?
Oh, in terms of.
I mean,
that's
how are
the
we going
small-
to get our money back?
We get our attorney fees back in all this. As part of the judgment, we would get all the attorney fees. In fact, I'm sorry, one of the other things that we are doing right now, and excuse me for omitting this, is the code is unclear right now. It is whether we get our attorney fees if we go to court on a criminal matter. And so when I looked at that, we have also adjusted this to make certain that if we file any criminal cases, that we get our attorney fees in that criminal proceeding. So that, in other words, the whole intent of this is that the city is whole if someone violates something. You know, you get the fine and all your cost.
It's also my understanding that maybe we might run our code enforcement a little more efficiently as well to the city manager, right? We're going to try to do something like this, I'm sure. I mean, like most companies are short-staffed and it's really hard to get things done, but there was direction in that area because we've had lapses in coverage, code enforcement on, let's say, just certain days that they might not have, been out there. So I'm glad to hear that this is going to be implemented.
Yeah, good. Okay, public comment?
They're flocking to the podium. Entertain a motion?
Well, I finally got it.
Upon that is upon the majority of votes. That is.
Call for a motion.
I move an ordinance of the City of Avalon amending Title I, Chapter 9 to the Avalon Municipal Code relating to administrative citations, penalties, and adding enforcement provisions to the Avalon Municipal Code.
And be adopted and waive all further readings.
Well, you didn't write that down.
Recommended action.
Oh, okay. Be adopted and waive all further readings.
No, be introduced.
Be introduced.
And adopted.
Okay.
And
Is there a second?
introduced and waived.
I'll second.
Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Okay, social media policy.
Yes, so at long last, we have created for you a social media and public outreach policy. This is significant because we're obviously trying to ramp up our efforts to be more transparent, to get more information out there. One of the concerns we've had up until now is how do we do that in a manner that's uniform, that has prescribed rules, that everybody knows what the process and procedure is. So Jordan Monroe's created this attached social media use and public outreach policy. I should point out that it's going to be a phased approach, and as we start, we're going to crawl before we walk or run, and so we're just going to post only specified sites, certain types of information, have people monitor traffic but not engage. The idea is to get information out there and to be aware of what the public concerns and comments are, but it's not to enter into a dialogue. And it may be that we never get to that step because we decide as a policy that's not in our interest. But I just want to make that clear. For now, we're identifying certain sites. Example would be Oktoberfest, having a city Facebook page and putting up a flyer on there and providing some information about that event. But if a comment came in, negative or positive, we wouldn't respond. We're just looking to get information out and to hear what people are saying about it. We would anticipate that this is obviously a growing area. There's going to be a lot more sites that come about. So we're going to expand the list of places that we're posting and where we're monitoring traffic. If you have questions about it, Jordan is our expert on this. If you don't, he'll not talk. So it's up to you.
He's our
Pete. He's our Pete.
He's gonna be waiting all day. Got to talk.
I think that was directed at Jordan, not the council.
Yeah, it was.
Jordan's a very good sport, so thank you for putting up with me.
Is there anything you would like to say?
In 2 minutes or less.
The only thing I want to...
Yeah, you're on a 3-minute clock.
The only thing to add would be with regards to not commenting. Because one of the things about town is it's very personal in nature, and social media can often be misconstrued when things are posted and are well intended to generate a dialogue. So through this, we want to disseminate information, but we'd really prefer for you to engage face-to-face with people and have that sort of dialogue. So that's why, one of the reasons why we want to start with holding off on commenting and responding, because we want to generate that as personal nature and have that direct contact with people.
And it's geared to staff, it's geared to everybody, not just council. You're quite clear on.
Very much, right, exactly.
It's wonderful, it's for the, yes. So it's very good. Excellent. Okay, what's the pleasure of the council? Public comment? No? Okay.
I'm on social media for most of my jobs. And so my question is, does this still allow me to answer questions that are not on city sites or city pages? For instance, hey guys, what's the number for City Hall? I know the answer.
Sure,
but
that's
and
their First Amendment rights, obviously, they're protected as well. What we're trying to avoid is policy decisions, obviously being discussed and those type of things.
Right, and the Brown Act definitely needs to be called out and probably should be, this should be absolutely given to the commission as well, just as a reminder, because it does have some great points that have been added in, so.
Jordan will be happy to make a lengthy presentation to the next planning commission.
Okay, no further comment? Council, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve the social media use and public outreach policy as presented. and adopt with no further readings, is that?
No, that's not, no.
Oh, that's not how you do it?
No, because it's not an ordinance, it's just a policy.
Oh, it's just, okay, well, there you go, then there's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded, call for the vote.
All ayes?
And along those lines, I'd just like to make a comment, and I don't know if we can discuss it today or we need to wait. The Catalina Island Yacht Club Foundation solicited me for what was a desire that the council or I had for a donation. And the message board is something that I really feel strongly about, and for some of you, the issue was primarily the cost. They gave us $6,500. And in talking to Jen, I understand that the location at Vaughn's is still available. And I know, Rich, it's something that you're not really in favor of. However, since we now have the check in hand that could move forward, if we need to vote, whatever we need to do, I would like to see us proceed with that. If it becomes a problem at Vaughn's, of course, it can always be removed. But I would like, since we have the funds and it wasn't, I would like to be able to proceed with that, but I'm not sure what we do.
On the agenda.
Okay, so we can't take action on it, so could we put it on the agenda for next?
Well, we were talking about this. I mean, city attorney, I think, have a difference of opinion on this. So he's the legal expert, obviously, but we were, actually, Jordan just sent me a text message when you were bringing this up, by the way. So our thought was this was an electronic sign that was posting information, but if it's an action we need to take separately, that's fine.
I would just say that because we've considered this twice before as an agenda item specifically to this item, then I think it's only fair for the public to know that this specific item is being considered, since we've done that in the past.
That's fine.
Okay.
And when we do bring it back, we'll mention that it is going to be covered under this policy, so that the rules of engagement are the same.
Okay, perfect.
So thank you for bringing that up.
And I believe now we're going to close session.
We have 3 closed sessions: conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. This is considering initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of section 94956.9. This concerns considering legal options with respect to the proposed water well. Second is public employee performance evaluation, city manager. And lastly, public employee appointment, human resources manager.
This may take a while, a little while.
Is it fair to excuse staff?
Yes.
Oh.
Can we please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Make them stay.
No.
And we're back from closed session. Is there any reportable action?
Yes, on item number 3, public employee appointment, the council unanimously appointed Tiffany Bowes as the human resources manager.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other business? Meeting adjourned.